There is a book in the Bible that most people are afraid to read. Not because it is too complicated, not because it is too mysterious, not because its language is impenetrable or its ideas are beyond reach, but because it is too honest, uncomfortably, searingly, beautifully honest. It looks at life without flinching. It stares directly into the face of suffering, disappointment, confusion, and loss, and it does not look away. It does not offer you a quick fix. It does not hand you a neat list of easy answers and send you on your way feeling temporarily better. It does not pretend that life is simple, or that faith removes all pain, or that trusting God means nothing will ever go wrong. Instead, it sits with you in the middle of your reality. Wherever that reality happens to be tonight, this morning, in this season, in this particular weight you are carrying. And it tells you the truth. The kind of truth that once you hear it, you cannot unhear. The kind of truth that quietly, patiently, and with extraordinary wisdom begins to dismantle everything you thought you understood about success, meaning, time, control, and purpose. And then, slowly, carefully, and with remarkable tenderness, begins to rebuild something far more solid in its place. That book is Ecclesiastes, and today, over the course of this extended and unhurried study, we are going to walk through it together. We are going to move through it slowly and carefully and with deep reverence, not as an academic exercise, not as a theological lecture designed to impress, but as a deeply personal and profoundly practical journey. Because the words written in Ecclesiastes were not written for scholars sitting in comfortable offices with libraries at their backs. They were written for people who are tired, people who have worked hard and still feel empty inside in ways they cannot quite explain, people who have achieved the things they once dreamed about and found, to their bewilderment and their private grief, that the achievement did not fill the hollow place inside them the way they were sure it would. People who are confused by injustice, who have watched the wrong people prosper and the right people suffer and have struggled to hold their faith together in the face of it. People who have loved and lost. People who are carrying grief that has no clean ending. People who lie awake at 3 a.m, staring at the ceiling, with a mind that will not be still and a heart that is carrying more than any heart was designed to carry alone. People who are wrestling with anxiety that has become so constant, so familiar, so woven into the fabric of their daily life that they have almost stopped noticing it. But they feel its weight in everything they do, every decision they make. Every morning they get up and try again. If that is you, even in part, even around the edges, then this study was made for you. Ecclesiastes was written by a man the Bible describes as the wisest person who ever lived. A king who had access to every pleasure this world has to offer, every form of human achievement, every avenue of knowledge, every material comfort that extraordinary power and extraordinary wealth could provide. A man who built more than any ruler of his time, who planted gardens and vineyards, who gathered wisdom from every direction, who loved deeply and accumulated widely and laughed freely and thought more carefully than almost anyone before or after him. A man who had, by every conceivable external measure, everything. And then, and this is the part that makes this book so extraordinary, so different from every other self-congratulatory account of human success. This man sat down in the dust of everything he had created and asked the most important question a human being can ask. The question that all of our busyness is partly designed to drown out. The question that surfaces in the quiet moments we try to avoid. The question that is always there, underneath the noise, waiting. Is this all there is? What does any of it actually mean? And what in the end is the right way to live a human life? What he discovered through that long, costly, honest process of searching is contained in 12 chapters of Scripture. And I want to say this clearly before we go any further, because it is one of the most important things about this book. It is not depressing. I know Ecclesiastes has a reputation for being dark, for being the melancholy corner of the Bible, the place you go when you want to feel existentially unsettled. That reputation is undeserved, and I would argue it is backwards. Ecclesiastes is one of the most liberating books in the entire Bible, because what it does, its primary work, its great gift, is free you. It frees you from the exhausting, relentless, life-consuming pursuit of things that were never going to satisfy you anyway. It frees you from the pressure of trying to control outcomes that were never yours to control. It frees you from the toxic grip of comparison, from the soul-crushing weight of pride, from the paralysis of an uncertain future, and it points you, slowly, steadily, honestly, and with more compassion than you might expect, back to the only foundation that has ever been capable of holding the full weight of a human life without buckling. The fear of the Lord, the reverence, the relationship, the daily surrender to a God who is bigger than your questions, more faithful than your doubts, more present in your chaos than you have been able to feel. So find a comfortable place. Let the noise of the world fall away for a little while. Take a breath, a real one, the kind you have been forgetting to take because everything has been moving too fast. And let us begin. Before we go any further into the text, I want to take a genuine moment to speak directly to you. Whoever you are, wherever in the world you are watching or listening to this right now, I do not take lightly the fact that you have chosen to spend this time here. In a world that is constantly competing for your attention, that offers you an infinite scroll of distraction and noise and entertainment, you chose this. You chose to sit with the Word of God, and that is not a small thing. Whether you found this video at 2 in the morning because you could not sleep and something deep inside you was quietly searching for peace you could not find on your own, or whether you are sitting here in the early morning with your coffee, deliberately and intentionally carving out time for God before the day swallows you whole. I am genuinely glad you are here. This community has become something that moves me every single time I think about it. People from every background, every country, every stage of life and faith, gathering around the same ancient and living word. That is extraordinary, and you are part of it. I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop it in the comments right now, just your city, your country, even just a region, if that is all you are comfortable sharing. It is one of my favorite things about these videos, to scroll through the comment section afterward and see the names of places from every corner of the earth. Someone in Lagos, someone in Manchester, someone in Sao Paulo, someone in Seoul, someone sitting alone in a small town in the American Midwest, someone in a city whose name I have to look up on a map. All of them here, all of them gathered, all of them seeking. There is something deeply powerful and deeply moving about that, and I never want to take it for granted. And if this kind of content matters to you, if these long, slow, deep walks through Scripture give you something you genuinely need, something you cannot quite find in the quicker formats and the shorter takes, then please subscribe to this channel. I'm asking you sincerely and from the heart, not as a formality and not as a box to tick at the beginning of a video. I'm asking because this channel exists for a real purpose, to serve people who are hungry for the Word of God in its depth and its fullness. Every person who subscribes is a real human being who will be reached by future studies, future encouragements, future moments of truth that might arrive in someone's exact moment of need at exactly the right time. If you believe in that, if this has been that for you at any point, then please subscribe right now if you have not already done so. It costs you nothing, and it genuinely matters more than you know. And if you want to go even a step further, if you want to be part of the inner circle of what is happening in this community, to receive early access to new videos before they go public, and to join a growing group of people around the world who are serious, genuinely serious, about walking deeper with God, consider becoming a channel member. The link is right there below this video. You would be joining something real. A community that prays and reflects and grows together, that spans time zones and continents and languages and life situations, held together by the simple and profound common ground of people who want to know God more and live more faithfully in the light of what they know. We are a global family, and there is a seat here for you. Now, let us go deep. The world. Ecclesiastes was written to understand Ecclesiastes well. It genuinely helps to understand the world it was written into, and to sit for a moment with the observation that the gap between that world and our own is far smaller than we might expect. The writer, traditionally understood to be Solomon, king of Israel and son of David, was living at what appeared from every external vantage point to be an extraordinary height of human flourishing. Jerusalem was prosperous. The trade routes were open and productive. The temple, the great project of Solomon's reign, the dwelling place of God among his people, had been built and consecrated with ceremony and sacrifice, and the kind of genuine weeping worship that fills the pages of 2 Chronicles. Wisdom was being sought and gathered from every corner of the known world. Kings and queens traveled from distant lands to hear Solomon speak. There was gold, and there was beauty, and there was, by any reasonable account, success. And yet, Solomon, or the preacher, as the text calls him, Kohelet in the Hebrew, the one who gathers and addresses an assembly, looked at all of it and felt something that has been felt by successful, accomplished, apparently comfortable people in every generation since the world began. A strange and persistent hollowness, a restlessness that prosperity could not still, a sense that something essential was missing even in the presence of everything that was supposed to make a person feel whole, a hunger that the world kept trying to answer in the wrong currency. The Hebrew word he reaches for to name this feeling is the word the King James Bible renders as vanity. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. In the original language, the word is hevel. And if you want to understand this book, you need to sit with that word and let it tell you what it actually means. Because it does not mean what we tend to mean when we use the word vanity in English. We use vanity to mean pride, excessive self-regard, the obsessive admiration of one's own reflection. That is not what hevel means. Hevel means breath, mist, vapor. The kind of thing that appears for a moment in the cold morning air and then is gone before you can hold it, before you can study it, before you can claim it or store it or build anything on it. Not evil, not worthless, not without its moment of beauty even, simply fleeting, temporary, insufficient as a foundation for anything permanent. And that is what Solomon discovered as he surveyed everything he had built and everything he had pursued and everything he had accumulated and tasted and experienced. Not that life was meaningless, not that effort was pointless, not that joy was an illusion, but that life pursued without God at its center, life organized around the temporary things as though they were the ultimate things, was like trying to build a permanent home on vapor. You could do it for a while, perhaps. The structure might even look impressive for a season, but it would not hold, because vapor cannot hold weight. It was never designed to. He begins the book, then, not from a place of nihilism or despair, but from a place of hard-won and genuine wisdom. He has paid the price of experience. He has gone further into human achievement and human pleasure and human knowledge than almost anyone before or after him. And rather than using that position to congratulate himself, he is using it to do something extraordinary, to invite you to learn from what he found without having to travel the same exhausting road to arrive at the same destination. He is saying, in essence, I went all the way to the end of every road that human ambition and human pleasure can take you down. I can tell you what is there, and you do not need to spend your life finding out for yourself. You can start where I ended. You can begin with wisdom rather than arriving at it after everything else has failed. That is the remarkable and compassionate gift of this book. A man who has everything, offering you the one thing you actually need. Lesson 1. The declaration that changes everything. Ecclesiastes 1.2. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. We begin where the book begins, with this declaration that has startled readers for thousands of years. And before we move 1 inch past it, we need to let it do its full work in us. Because this opening statement is not simply a thesis or a mood or a philosophical position. It is a diagnosis, a precise, courageous, costly diagnosis of the human condition delivered by someone who was qualified to make it in a way that almost no one else in history has been. Vanity of vanities. The Hebrew construction is a superlative, the way ancient Hebrew expresses the highest degree of something. The way you would say the Song of Songs to mean the greatest song, or the King of Kings to mean the supreme king. The preacher says vanity of vanities to mean the most complete, the most absolute, the most thoroughgoing form of hevel, the most vapor-like of vapors, the most temporary of temporary things. And what is he applying this description to? All. Everything. The entirety of human life as it is, lived under the sun, that phrase, under the sun, which he will return to again and again throughout the book, meaning life as experienced in this world, in this age, through this physical and temporal existence. Now, read carefully. He is not saying that existence is meaningless. He is not adopting the position of nihilism, which says that nothing matters, and there is nothing to hope for, and the universe is indifferent, and we are all just accidental arrangements of matter on our way to dissolution. That is not what Hevel means, and that is not what he is saying. He is saying something much more precise, that the things of this earth, pursued and valued as though they were eternal, as though they were sufficient, as though they were the final answer to the human soul's hunger, those things are vapor. They have a season. They are real in their season. But they will not stay. And when they go, they leave nothing behind that can hold you up. This is liberating in a way that requires unpacking, because here is the experience of so many people who are currently living under the weight of anxiety. They are anxious about vapor. They are exhausted from trying to hold on to vapor, to control vapor, to predict and manage and preserve vapor. The job is vapor. It can be gone tomorrow. The health is vapor. It can change in a single phone call. The savings account, the reputation, the carefully maintained image, the relationship that has been the center of your emotional world, the plan you have built your 5 years around, all of it is, in the preacher's ruthlessly honest accounting, Hevel. Not nothing, not worthless, but temporary, not something you can build an ultimate foundation on. And here is the pivot, the turn that makes this liberating rather than terrifying. If everything in this life is temporary, then everything in this life is also manageable, because temporary things do not require the kind of desperate, white-knuckled grip that we have been maintaining on them. They do not require you to sacrifice your sleep, your peace, your health, your relationships, your relationship with God, on the altar of keeping them. If they are temporary, they will pass. The good ones and the hard ones alike. The suffering is temporary. The confusion is temporary. The season you are in right now, as permanent as it feels, is not permanent. It is breath. It will change. And the God who holds the permanent things, whose love is not vapor, whose purposes are not vapor, whose faithfulness is not vapor, is already at work in the temporary, shaping it towards something that will not pass away. This is the first gift Ecclesiastes offers you. The gift of honest perspective, the gift of seeing things as they actually are rather than as your anxiety insists they are. And it is a gift that, once received, begins to quietly loosen the grip of fear. Lesson 2. The world keeps turning without your management. Ecclesiastes 1:4-7. One generation passeth away, and another generation cometh, but the earth abideth forever. The sun also ariseth, and the sun goeth down, and hasteth to his place where he arose. The wind goeth toward the south, and turneth about unto the north. It whirleth about continually, and the wind returneth again according to his circuits. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again. Before he says a single word about human experience specifically, the preacher pauses to observe the world around him. He looks up. He looks outward. He watches the sun rise and set. He feels the wind shifting direction. He listens to the sound of rivers moving toward the sea. And what he notices in all of this is a pattern, a rhythm, a system of cycles that has been operating since long before he arrived on the scene and will continue operating long after he is gone. Generation follows generation. The earth continues. The sun rises and sets with absolute reliability. The wind blows in its circuits, south and then north, turning and returning. The rivers pour into the sea endlessly, and the sea is never full. And the rivers keep running, fed from the same sources that have always fed them. There is something deeply, fundamentally stabilizing about sitting with these observations. In a life that feels chaotic, in a world that feels unpredictable, in a season where everything seems unstable and nothing feels secure, the natural world maintains its rhythms without any input from you at all. The sun did not consult your schedule this morning. It rose anyway. The seasons did not pause to check whether your circumstances were favorable. They turned anyway. The rivers did not wait for your approval before flowing toward the sea. They flowed. The world is operating according to rhythms established by its creator. Rhythms that are larger than any individual human life, larger than any generation, larger than any empire or institution or achievement that human beings have ever constructed. And this observation, simple as it sounds, carries a weight of comfort that is easy to miss in your hurry past it. Your anxiety does not alter the orbit of the earth. Your worry does not change the direction of the wind. The frantic spinning of your mind in the middle of the night does not affect the rising of the sun. This is not meant to minimize your experience. It is meant to locate it. You are a person living through a season of a life inside a story that is being told by someone far larger than any of us, and the one who set the sun in its circuit, the one who established the paths of the rivers, the one who ordered the seasons. That same one is telling your story, ordering your seasons, working through the rhythms of your particular life with as much intention and as much faithfulness as he brings to the turning of the earth. This is not a counsel toward passivity or fatalism. It is not suggesting that your choices do not matter, or that your actions have no consequence. It is inviting you into a posture of humility, the posture of someone who has recognized that they are not the center of the universe, not the manager of reality, not responsible for outcomes that were never in their hands to begin with. And from that posture of genuine humility, something extraordinary becomes possible. The thing that anxiety never allows, but that wisdom always makes room for. Rest. Not the rest of someone who has stopped caring, but the rest of someone who has correctly understood what they are and are not responsible for, and who has made the decision, conscious, deliberate, and repeated as often as necessary, to lay the unmanageable things at the feet of the one who manages all things. Lesson 3. The weariness of a world that never satisfies. Ecclesiastes 1:8. All things are full of labor. Man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. The preacher turns from the rhythms of the natural world to the experience of human beings living within it, and he makes an observation that is both ancient and startlingly contemporary. We are insatiable. The eye is never fully satisfied with what it sees. The ear is never filled by what it hears. There is always more to experience, more to consume, more to know, more to achieve, more to accumulate. And the pursuit of that endless more is exhausting. We live in an era that has taken this fundamental human tendency and accelerated it beyond anything any previous generation could have imagined or planned for. We carry in our pockets devices that provide access to more information, more stimulation, more content, more noise, more comparison, and more distraction than any human being in the entire history of the world has ever been required to navigate. We can, at any moment of any day, know what is happening on every continent, see how everyone we have ever met is presenting their life to the world, consume entertainment from every genre in every language, engage with opinions from every political and spiritual and cultural direction simultaneously. The feast is endless. The scroll never stops. The notification never permanently settles. And yet, and this is the thing the preacher knew 3,000 years ago, and the data of our modern mental health crisis is now confirming, we are not less anxious for all that information. We are not more satisfied for all that consumption. We are not more at peace, more grounded, more secure, more joyful, more purposeful, because we have access to more content than any human being in history. If anything, and there is growing evidence that this is exactly what is happening, the noise has made the emptiness louder. The stimulation has made the hunger more acute. The comparison has made the restlessness more tormenting, because the emptiness was never going to be filled by information. The hunger the preacher is describing is not a hunger for more data or more entertainment or more stimulation or more content. It is a hunger for meaning, for genuine connection, for truth that speaks to the deepest level of who we are, for the sense of being known and loved not by an algorithm that has analyzed your behavior, but by the God who made you, for the kind of quiet in which a real voice can actually be heard. And there is a real voice that wants to be heard. That has always been there, speaking beneath the noise, patient, faithful, unhurried, never shouting over the chaos, but always present the moment you are willing to sit still long enough to listen. Ecclesiastes is, in one dimension, a very long and profoundly important argument for slowing down, for turning off, or at least turning down, the noise, for sitting in a quiet that initially feels uncomfortable and empty, because when the noise stops, you have to sit with yourself, with what you actually feel beneath the performance of coping, with what you actually believe when you stop reciting the things you are supposed to believe, with what you actually want underneath all the things you have been conditioned to want. That can be confronting, genuinely confronting, but it is in that confrontation, in that honest, quiet, uncomfortable reckoning with your actual interior life, that real wisdom finds the soil it needs to take root. You cannot receive truth while you are drowning in distraction. You cannot hear the voice of God while the noise of the world is at full volume. The preacher has tested every form of noise the ancient world had to offer, gone all the way to the bottom of every barrel of distraction and stimulation and entertainment, and he has come back with a single, clear, costly report. None of it satisfies. Only God satisfies. And to get to God, you have to be willing to sit in the quiet long enough and honestly enough to let Him speak. Lesson 4. The experiment of pleasure and what it found. Ecclesiastes 2:1-3. I said in mine heart, Go to now, I will prove thee with mirth, therefore enjoy pleasure. And behold, this also is vanity. I said of laughter, It is mad, and of mirth, what doeth it? I sought in mine heart to give myself unto wine, yet acquainting mine heart with wisdom, and to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was that good for the sons of men. At this point in the book, Solomon does something extraordinary. He does not simply assert his conclusions about pleasure and satisfaction. He tests them. Deliberately, methodically, with the resources of an empire behind him, he sets up one of the most comprehensive personal experiments in the history of human literature. He will test whether pleasure, in all its forms pursued to its absolute limits, can provide the meaning and the satisfaction and the sense of wholeness that he has been searching for. And he commits to this experiment completely. He gives himself to mirth and to laughter. He explores wine and celebration. He surrounds himself with music and beauty. He builds, he plants, he creates, he gathers, and all of this, crucially, while maintaining enough of his philosophical distance to observe and evaluate what he is experiencing in real time. He becomes both the subject and the scientist of his own life, conducting the experiment from the inside while keeping enough of his wisdom intact to accurately report what he finds. What follows is a remarkable inventory of human achievement and human indulgence. He built houses, not modest dwellings, but the architectural achievements of a great king. He planted vineyards and designed elaborate gardens and orchards, a testimony to beauty and patience and the long view of cultivation. He made pools of water to irrigate growing things, creating in the middle of a dry land a kind of sustained fertility. He gathered servants and possessions. He accumulated silver and gold of kings and provinces. He assembled singers, both men and women. He gave himself to everything that human desire reaches toward when given unlimited resources and unlimited permission. He withheld nothing from his eyes. Whatever his heart desired, he gave it. Whatever form of pleasure, whatever aesthetic experience, whatever achievement of work or accumulation of beauty, he held nothing back. He ate all the way to the bottom of the feast. He drank all the way to the bottom of the cup. He went as far as a human being with extraordinary resources could possibly go in the direction of satisfying the soul's hunger through external experience. And then he sat down. He looked at everything his hands had made and everything he had worked to achieve and everything he had tasted and experienced and gathered. And what he said about what he found deserves to be read slowly, because it is one of the most important sentences in the book. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought, and on the labor that I had labored to do, and behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. Vexation of spirit. That phrase is worth sitting with rather than rushing past. The Hebrew word translated as vexation carries the image of striving after wind, chasing something that moves away from you as fast as you move toward it, something that fills your hands for a thrilling moment and then disappears through your fingers, something that is exhausting to pursue and leaves you with nothing to show for the exhaustion. You chased the wind, you did not catch it, and you used up years of your life in the chasing. How many people reading this, how many people watching this tonight are living inside that experience right now, chasing the career level that will finally make them feel adequate, chasing the number in their bank account that will finally make them feel secure, chasing the relationship that will finally make them feel whole, chasing the achievement that will finally silence the voice in their head that says they are not enough and never have been. And some of them have caught versions of what they were chasing. They have arrived at the destination they were aiming for, and they have stood there in the place they worked so hard to reach and felt the wind blowing through their open hands. The preacher has been there. He bought the ticket, took the ride all the way to the end, and came home knowing something that most people spend their whole lives refusing to believe until they are forced to by the failure of everything else. Pleasure is a beautiful and legitimate gift, but it is a terrible and inadequate God. It blesses us genuinely in its season, but it cannot bear the weight of ultimate meaning. It was not designed to bear that weight. Only the one who designed pleasure and who designed you and who knows what you were actually made for can bear that weight without buckling. This is not an argument against pleasure. The preacher himself, later in this book, will warmly and explicitly invite you to eat and drink and enjoy the good things of life with gratitude and openness. He is not a killjoy. He is something far more valuable, an honest witness. And what he witnesses is simply that pleasure, elevated beyond its proper place, becomes a form of bondage. That the pursuit of satisfaction through the accumulation of experience is a pursuit that cannot, by its nature, ever arrive. And that the wisest and most compassionate thing he can do for you is to tell you this clearly, before you spend another decade finding it out for yourself. Lesson 5. The experiment of achievement and what it cost. Ecclesiastes 2:4-11. I made me great works. I builded me houses. I planted me vineyards. I made me gardens and orchards. I gathered me also silver and gold and the peculiar treasure of kings and of the provinces. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought and on the labor that I had labored to do. And behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. If pleasure could not fill the hollow place, perhaps achievement could. Perhaps the satisfaction of building something real, something lasting, something that would carry meaning beyond the moment. Perhaps that was the answer. And so Solomon turned his extraordinary resources and his formidable mind to the work of creation on the grandest possible scale. He builds houses of stunning architecture. He plants vineyards and tends them with the patience of a man who understands that the best things take time to develop. He designs elaborate gardens and orchards, engineering water systems to sustain them in a dry climate. He accumulates wealth that surpasses every king who has preceded him. He builds an empire of achievement that no one in his world can match or rival, and there is nothing inherently wrong with any of this. Let that be said clearly. The desire to build something meaningful, to work hard, to create something excellent, to contribute something to the world that was not there before you arrived. This is not a corrupt desire. It reflects something real about the nature of human beings made in the image of a creator God. We are creative. We are builders. The impulse to make things and improve things and leave things better than we found them is part of the divine image that we carry. It is good. But Solomon pushed that impulse to its absolute limit, and at the absolute limit, he found the same thing he found at the limit of pleasure. That achievement, without God at its center, without being lived in the context of a genuine relationship with the Creator, without being understood as a gift and a stewardship rather than a monument to human glory. Achievement at that limit is still vapor. You can build the most beautiful and complex and impressive structure imaginable and still lie awake at night aching for something you cannot name. You can accumulate more achievements than anyone in your city, your industry, your generation, and still feel, in the honest spaces between your accomplishments, that something essential and irreplaceable is missing. This is not a defect in you. This is design, because achievement, like pleasure, is meant to be enjoyed as a gift within the context of a relationship with God, not deployed as a substitute for that relationship. When we try to use achievement to earn the sense of worth and meaning and security that can only come from being rightly related to our Creator, we are asking achievement to do something it was never equipped to do. We are running an engine on the wrong fuel, and no matter how hard the engine works, no matter how much fuel we pour in, it will eventually begin to fail. And in that failure, in the hollow echo that achievement leaves when it cannot deliver what we needed it to deliver, there is an invitation. The same invitation that runs through the whole of Ecclesiastes. To stop, to look at what your hands have made, and to recognize that the maker of your hands is not to be found in what those hands have made. To look up, to acknowledge, honestly and without pretense, the limits of what human striving can accomplish, and to turn toward the one whose love does not need to be achieved, whose approval does not need to be earned, whose presence does not require the construction of any monument at all. Lesson 6. The grief of knowing too much. Ecclesiastes 1:18. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. This is one of the most painfully and precisely honest verses in all of Scripture. And it is a verse that speaks with particular force to a particular kind of person. The deeply feeling, deeply thinking person who has spent their life pressing into hard questions, refusing the comfort of easy answers, seeking to understand rather than simply to be told what to believe. The person whose mind is always working. The person who sees things that other people miss and feels things that other people seem to process and move on from without the same residue. For such a person, the accumulation of wisdom and knowledge is not simply enlightening. It is also, in its own way, costly, because the more clearly you see, the more clearly you see the suffering. The more accurately you understand how broken and complex and painful this world actually is, the heavier that understanding can feel against the inside of your chest. The more seriously you take the questions of life and meaning and justice and love, the more those questions can press down on you in the quiet hours when there is nothing left to distract you from them. Solomon knows this. He has lived this. He has accumulated more wisdom than any person alive and discovered that wisdom, without the anchor of genuine trust in God, becomes its own particular form of burden, because wisdom without God leaves you seeing the problems with perfect clarity while lacking access to the one who holds the answers. It leaves you perceiving the brokenness with extraordinary precision while not being held by the one who is in the process of making all things new. It leaves you knowing enough to be troubled by everything and not enough to be at peace with anything. But here is the crucial turn, the thing that makes this observation transformative rather than simply depressing. The grief of wisdom is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a deeper and more honest kind of faith. Because when you have exhausted your own understanding, when you have pursued every intellectual avenue and acknowledged with genuine honesty that human wisdom, however brilliant and however vast, cannot reach the bottom of life's deepest questions, you arrive at the edge of something, a particular kind of edge, the edge of intellectual surrender. The place where the mind, having done everything it can do, quietly sets down the tools of its trade and acknowledges that there are things beyond knowing, things beyond controlling, things that require not a larger or more sophisticated mind, but a humbler and more open heart. And that is the place, that exact place, that precise posture of intellectual humility where God has always been waiting to be found. Lesson 7. To everything. A season, the most beloved chapter. Ecclesiastes 3:1-8. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. If you have ever attended a memorial service, or heard these words read at a wedding, or encountered them at a bedside, or in a moment of great transition, you know something of their power. These are among the most quoted words in all of literature, not merely in Scripture, and they have maintained their power across thousands of years and hundreds of languages and an incalculable number of different human circumstances because they touch something so fundamental about how human life actually works, that every person in every generation immediately recognizes the truth of them. Read that list slowly. Read each pair as a real part of your own story. A time to be born, the beginning, the arrival, the season of first things. A time to die, the ending, the departure, the season of last things. A time to plant, when everything is potential and possibility, and the ground is ready, and the work of preparation is good and right. A time to uproot, when what has grown needs to be released, when the season of that particular thing has passed, and holding on to it would be the wrong kind of faithfulness. A time to weep. Give that one a moment. Not a time to perform weeping, not a time to schedule grief and then get back to business, but a real, appointed, necessary time to weep, to let the sadness out, to stop managing the pain and let it be what it is. A time to laugh when the weeping has done its work and something has lifted, and there is genuine joy to be had. And receiving that joy is not a betrayal of anything, but a trust in the God who gives it. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to search and a time to stop searching, to accept that some things will not be found in this life, and that acceptance is not defeat, but wisdom. A time to keep and a time to let go. A time to be silent, the kind of silence that is not absence but presence, the kind of quiet that is not emptiness but fullness of a different kind. And a time to speak, when the words have gathered and found their form, and the moment for them has arrived. The wisdom the preacher is offering here is not simply the observation that life has different seasons. Every person old enough to have lived through a few of them already knows that. The wisdom he is offering goes deeper. He is saying that these seasons are not random. They are not the result of chaos or indifferent fate. There is a time, an appointed time, to every purpose under heaven. Each season has been placed. Each turning has been ordered by the one who ordered the sun in its circuit and set the rivers in their paths, by the same God whose purposes run through the whole of human history, with a faithfulness that does not waver, even when it cannot be clearly seen. This is the balm for the person who is currently stuck in a season they did not choose and cannot escape and do not understand. The season of waiting, the season of loss, the season of confusion, that will not resolve into clarity no matter how hard you press for it. The season of what feels like silence from the God you are crying out to. The preacher is not promising that these seasons are comfortable. He is not suggesting that you should pretend to feel differently than you feel. He is doing something more important. He is insisting that these seasons are not accidents. They are not evidence that God has forgotten you, or withdrawn from you, or decided your story is not worth telling with care. They are appointed. They have purpose that is real, even when it is not yet visible. And they will turn, because seasons, by their nature, turn. If you are in a hard season right now, and some of you watching this have carried it a very long way already, let this truth settle in like warmth after cold. This season has an appointed time. It is not the permanent condition of your life. It is not the final word on your story. And the God who appointed this season is already present in the next one, working towards something for you that you cannot yet see, something that will one day make the waiting make sense in ways you cannot currently imagine. Lesson 8. Eternity placed in the human heart. Ecclesiastes 3:11. He hath made everything beautiful in his time. Also, he hath set eternity in their heart, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. This verse does two things simultaneously, and both of them are profound. The first thing it does is affirm something that the preacher has been careful throughout the book not to deny, that God has made everything beautiful in its time. The temporary things are not ugly or worthless or beneath notice. They are beautiful. The meal shared with people you love, the achievement that required months of honest effort, the laugh that came from somewhere genuine, the ordinary morning that held in its unremarkable light a quality of gift you might not have noticed if you had not been paying attention. These are beautiful. They are real. They matter. God made them and called them beautiful, and you are invited to receive them as such. But the second thing this verse does is explain something about the human condition that most people feel deeply and carry privately and rarely have language for. It explains why the beautiful temporary things, as genuinely beautiful as they are, never quite satisfy the whole of what we are. Why the meal, as good as it is, leaves you slightly hungry for something else. Why the achievement, as real as it is, does not fully answer the question it was supposed to answer. Why the laugh, as genuine as it was, does not reach all the way into the place that most needs to be touched. Why, in the midst of a perfectly good life, you can still feel the pull of something more, something larger, something beyond the reach of anything you can name or measure or hold. God has set eternity in the human heart. He has placed, in the deepest place of who you are, a longing for the eternal, a homesickness for something that this world, for all its beauty, was not designed to provide. You were made for more than this age. You were made for a relationship that does not end, for a belonging that is not provisional, for a joy that does not depend on circumstances, for a peace that is not threatened by loss, for a home that will not be taken from you. And because you were made for those things, because they are woven into the very fabric of your design, you will always feel, at some level, the ache of not yet having arrived. This is not ingratitude. This is not spiritual malfunction. It is not evidence that something is wrong with you, or that your faith is deficient, or that you are failing to appreciate what God has given you. It is design. The longing is there because you were made for something that has not yet fully arrived. The homesickness is real because home is real, more real than anything here, more permanent than anything this age can offer, waiting for you in the promises of a God who does not make promises, he does not keep. And the second half of this verse adds something to this that is worth sitting with carefully. No man can find out the work that God makes from beginning to end. You cannot see the whole thing. You were not designed to see the whole thing. The plans of God operate across timescales and dimensions that are simply beyond the capacity of any human mind to fully hold. What he is doing in your story, in this season, in the particular set of circumstances you are navigating right now, the full scope of it, the connections between what is happening now and what he is building across the whole of your life, the ways in which what feels like detour is actually direction. You cannot see all of that from where you are standing. And that is not a failure. That is the normal, designed condition of a finite creature in relationship with an infinite creator. What you can do, what you were designed to do, what the whole of Ecclesiastes is building toward, is trust the one who does see it all, who knows the ending from the beginning, who is working purposefully and faithfully in the parts you cannot see, who has set eternity in your heart as a promise, a preview, a compass pointing toward a home he is preparing. You do not need to see the whole map. You need to know the map maker and to walk one step at a time with him. Lesson 9. The certainty of God's justice, Ecclesiastes 3:16-17. And moreover, I saw under the sun the place of judgment, that wickedness was there, and the place of righteousness, that iniquity was there. I said in mine heart, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time there for every purpose and for every work. The preacher now turns his honest gaze toward one of the most enduring and most painful sources of human anxiety and spiritual confusion: injustice. Not personal pain or personal failure, which are hard enough on their own terms, but the specific pain of injustice. The experience of watching someone do wrong and escape accountability. The experience of being treated unfairly with no human recourse available. The experience of watching wickedness operate in places that should be defined by righteousness, courts, councils, institutions, communities, and finding that the systems designed to correct these things are themselves corrupt, themselves compromised, themselves part of the problem. If you have ever felt that particular anger, the hot, tight, helpless kind of anger that comes from watching injustice go unremedied, from crying out for fairness and being met with silence, from doing everything right and watching it be undone by someone who did everything wrong and faced no consequence, then this passage is written directly into your experience. The preacher does not flinch from what he sees. He says plainly, in the place of judgment, wickedness is there. In the place of righteousness, iniquity is there. The systems that are supposed to deliver justice are themselves infected by injustice. He is not surprised by this, and he does not pretend it is otherwise. He observes it accurately and honestly, the way a person of genuine wisdom always engages with reality. But he also offers an anchor. Not a tidy explanation, not a simple resolution, not a theological answer that makes the injustice hurt less in the short term, but a deep, unshakable anchor that prevents the ship of your soul from being driven onto the rocks by the storm of things you cannot change. God shall judge the righteous and the wicked. Shall, not might, not eventually if things work out and the universe happens to balance its own books. Shall, with the certainty and the authority of divine promise. Every act, every word, every intention, every exercise of power, and every abuse of it, every suffering that went unwitnessed by human eyes and every wickedness that operated in the dark and escaped every form of human accountability, all of it will be brought before the one who sees everything and forgets nothing. The judge of all the earth will do right, not approximately right, not roughly right, perfectly, completely, comprehensively right, with a justice so thorough and so accurate that no act of love will go unrewarded and no act of cruelty will go unaddressed. This is not permission to stop fighting for justice in this world. The call to pursue justice, to advocate for the vulnerable, to resist wickedness where you have the capacity to resist it. That call runs all the way through Scripture and is not diminished by the preacher's observation here. What this verse provides is not a reason for passivity, but a place to stand while you continue the fight. A foundation that does not move when the outcomes of your efforts are uncertain. A peace that is not contingent on winning, because it is rooted in the knowledge that the final verdict belongs to a judge whose competence and whose integrity are absolute. You can lay down the weight of outcomes you cannot control. You can let go of the rage that comes from trying to personally enforce a justice you were never equipped to enforce. You can continue to do what is right, to speak what is true, to advocate for what is just, and then release the results to the one whose court has never been corrupted and whose docket is never overwhelmed. Lesson 10. The irreplaceable gift of genuine community. Ecclesiastes 4:9-12. Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow, but woe to him that is alone when he falleth, for he hath not another to help him up. Again, if two lie together, then they have heat. But how can one be warm alone? And if one prevail against him, two shall withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. After extended meditation on the futility of individual achievement and the inadequacy of human striving, the preacher arrives here at something beautiful and bracingly practical. He turns from the grand philosophical scale to the intimate, daily, deeply human scale of what it means to live alongside another person. And what he offers is a truth so simple it sounds almost naive, and so profound that most people only truly understand its weight when they have experienced the devastating alternative. Two are better than one, not because two people are twice as efficient or twice as capable or twice as impressive as one person operating independently, but because of something qualitatively different that happens in genuine relationship, in real partnership, in the kind of connection where two people are genuinely committed to each other's well-being. When one falls, the other can lift. When the cold comes, two people can share warmth that neither could have generated alone. When an attack comes, two people standing together can withstand something that would have overwhelmed either one individually. This wisdom is as ancient as the Genesis account of the first human being looking out at all of creation and finding, despite all its beauty, that something essential was missing. It is not good for man to be alone. Those words were not spoken as a reluctant concession to human weakness. They were spoken as a testimony to something God built into the design of what it means to be human. You were made for relationship, not self-sufficiency, not independence as the highest virtue, not the proud solitude of the person who has decided they do not need anyone. You were made for the particular kind of flourishing that can only happen in genuine, mutual, vulnerable connection with another person. And in the context of anxiety, this wisdom carries an urgency that cannot be overstated. Because anxiety is one of the most effective isolators that exists. It whispers that no one would understand what you are carrying, that you would be a burden to the people around you if you let them see how heavy things actually are, that the people you love have enough of their own difficulties without being asked to carry any of yours, that it is safer, genuinely safer, in terms of protecting both your vulnerability and your pride, to manage alone. These are lies, every one of them. And the preacher, writing 3,000 years before any modern psychology confirmed what he already knew from watching actual human lives, saw through them with extraordinary clarity. The person carrying anxiety in isolation is not being strong. They are being alone in a way that was never designed for a human being. The person who has trained themselves to never let anyone see what is underneath the surface is not resilient. They are simply one hard season away from collapse because the cord they are trying to use as a lifeline has only one strand. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. Real community, the kind where you are genuinely known and genuinely cared for and genuinely held, changes the equation entirely. Not by eliminating the difficulty, but by ensuring that when you fall, there is someone there to reach out a hand. That when the cold comes, there is warmth available that you could not have made alone. That the battle that would have broken you in isolation becomes survivable with someone standing alongside you. If you have been isolating, if anxiety has been quietly building a wall between you and the people God has placed in your life, let this passage be a gentle but clear call. Reach back. Be honest with someone you trust. Let yourself be known, not all at once, and not without discernment, but genuinely, deliberately, because the wholeness you are looking for cannot be built in isolation, and the God who designed you for community did not design an escape hatch from that design. Lesson 11. The discipline of few words. Ecclesiastes 5:1-3. Keep thy foot when thou goest to the house of God, and be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools. Be not rash with thy mouth, and let not thine heart be hasty to utter anything before God, for God is in heaven, and thou upon earth. Therefore let thy words be few. We live in a culture that is drowning in words, every opinion instantly expressed. Every reaction immediately published, every thought broadcast the moment it forms, before it has had the space to be considered or refined or tested against reality. The premium in our world is on volume, on speaking more frequently, more confidently, more loudly, and on the mistaken assumption that more words equal more wisdom, more engagement, more influence, more presence. The preacher disagrees, and not politely. A fool's voice, he says, is known by the multitude of words. The person who fills every silence with speech, who needs to respond to everything, who cannot sit in the presence of God without immediately translating that presence into words. That person is revealing something about the quality of their listening. And listening, Genuine, quiet, patient, expectant listening is the posture in which real encounter with God most often happens. Let your words be few. This is not a counsel of emotional suppression or spiritual passivity. It is a counsel about the relationship between speech and wisdom, between words and presence, between what we say and what we are actually hearing. The person who speaks most is rarely the person who understands most. The person who can sit in a silence without rushing to fill it is often the person who has the most to say when they finally do speak, because what they say has been formed in quiet rather than generated in noise. In prayer, this principle has particular force. There is a tendency in anxious prayer to bury the silence under words. More requests repeated more urgently, explained in more detail, as though God requires our full briefing before he can act, as though the sheer volume of our petition might finally tip the scales in our favor. But God is not moved by the volume of your words. He is moved by the sincerity and the honesty and the genuine orientation of your heart. He hears the prayer that arrives at his presence not with a prepared speech, but with an open, waiting, honestly needy heart, and says simply, "Here I am. I need you. I do not know what to ask, but here I am." Try this in your next time of prayer. Arrive and be quiet first. Sit with the awareness that God is in heaven and you are on earth, that the gap between the finite and the infinite is real, that you are approaching someone who is genuinely far greater than you, genuinely beyond your full comprehension, genuinely worthy of a posture of humility and reverence before the words begin. Let that awareness settle. Let the noise of the day fall behind you. And then, from that quieter place, let what is most honest in you rise to the surface and speak, simply, without performance, without trying to say the right things or use the right words or construct the most theologically impressive version of your request. Just honestly, just truly, fewer words, more presence. That is the way into the kind of prayer that actually changes things, and the kind of inner quiet that anxiety can never provide on its own. Lesson 12. The Trap of Loving Money. Ecclesiastes 5:10-12. He that loveth silver shall not be satisfied with silver, nor he that loveth abundance with increase. This is also vanity. When goods increase, they are increased that eat them. And what good is there to the owners thereof, saving the beholding of them with their eyes? The sleep of a laboring man is sweet, whether he eat little or much, but the abundance of the rich will not suffer him to sleep. The preacher turns his honest gaze to one of the most powerful and most universal of human anxieties: the fear of not having enough money. Financial insecurity, or more precisely, the relentless fear of it even in the presence of relative abundance, is one of the primary architects of the way most human beings structure their lives, their time, their choices, and their relationships. It shapes the careers people pursue and the ones they avoid. It shapes the risks they take and the ones they refuse. It shapes the way they think about the future, the way they relate to their children, the way they measure their own worth on any given morning. The preacher does not dismiss this. He is not naive about the real importance of financial provision. He acknowledges elsewhere in the book that money solves many practical problems and that the absence of it creates genuine suffering. He is a man of the real world, not an idealist. But he is also a man who tested the love of wealth to its absolute limit and came back with a report that should stop every anxiously money-focused person in their tracks. He that loves silver will not be satisfied with silver. This is not a moral judgment about wealth per se. It is a psychological and spiritual observation about the nature of the love of money. When money becomes the thing you are ultimately reaching for, when financial security becomes the baseline requirement before you can allow yourself to feel genuinely at peace, When the number you need in the bank before you stop being afraid keeps moving upward every time you approach it. The problem is not the amount of money you have. The problem is what you are using money to do. You are using it to try to answer an existential question that money was never designed to answer. You are asking a finite resource to provide an infinite security, and it will fail. Every time. But the contrast the preacher offers here is one of the most quietly beautiful things in the book. The laborer, the person of modest means who works hard and spends their day in genuine effort and comes home tired in their body, sleeps sweetly, whether they ate much or little that day, because they have done their work. Their conscience is clear. Their labor is behind them. Their hands are empty, but their heart is settled, and the results of the day are in God's hands, not in their grip. So they sleep. The rich man, whose abundance has become his identity and his God, whose number is always running somewhere in the background of his mind, he cannot sleep. Because the more wealth becomes your primary source of security, the more vulnerable you feel to every fluctuation in that wealth, every shift in the market, every unexpected expense. Every news story that touches on the economy, every conversation that brings the subject of money anywhere near the surface. All of it feeds the insomnia of a soul that has placed its trust in something that can be taken away without a moment's warning. There is a person who sleeps well, but it is not necessarily the person with the most money. It is the person with the clearest conscience, the most honest and trusting relationship with God, and the deepest, settled conviction that the results of their life are ultimately in hands far more capable than their own. That person can close their eyes and breathe, not because they have enough, but because they trust the one who is enough. Lesson 13. The gift of contentment. Ecclesiastes 5:18-20. Behold that which I have seen. It is good and comely for one to eat and to drink, and to enjoy the good of all his labor that he taketh under the sun all the days of his life, which God giveth him, for it is his portion. Every man also to whom God hath given riches and wealth, and hath given him power to eat thereof, and to take his portion, and to rejoice in his labor. This is the gift of God. Here, after all the dark honesty and the careful dismantling of every false foundation, the preacher does something that can genuinely surprise you if you have been expecting this book to remain consistently grim. He pauses and he celebrates. Warmly, genuinely, without qualification or irony. Eat and drink. Enjoy the good of your labor. Take your portion and rejoice in it. This is the gift of God. These are not half-hearted concessions to human weakness. They are full-throated, warm-hearted affirmations of something the preacher has understood through his whole long experiment with everything this world has to offer. The ordinary good things of life are not nothing. They are not distractions or consolation prizes or poor substitutes for the real thing. When they are received with open hands and grateful hearts, when they are understood as gifts from the God who is the source of every good thing, rather than trophies claimed by the strength of your own striving, they nourish you. They satisfy you in the measure they were designed to satisfy. They give you genuine, real, grounded joy. The meal shared with people you love, the satisfaction of honest work completed, the warmth of a good relationship, the particular pleasure of a beautiful day, received without anxiety about the next one, the laughter that comes from somewhere true. These things are beautiful, they are real, they matter, and the person who has learned to receive them as gifts, held loosely with gratitude, without the desperate grip of someone who has made them the foundation of their security, is living more wisely than the person who despises them as unspiritual on one hand, or clutches them with terrified attachment on the other. Contentment is the art of receiving what you have been given as genuinely what it is, a gift, not a substitute for what you really wanted, not a consolation for what you lost, not a down payment towards something you still need to earn, a gift complete in itself, enough for this moment, worth the fullness of your grateful present attention. This is harder than it sounds, because the mind that has been trained in anxiety or ambition does not naturally rest in what it has. It is always scanning for the threat, always reaching for the next thing, always measuring what it holds against what someone else holds, or what it used to hold, or what it is afraid of losing. Contentment requires a kind of deliberate, practiced reorientation, a daily, sometimes hourly decision to come back to the present, to the actual gift in your actual hand, to the actual goodness of this actual moment, to receive it, to enjoy it, to give thanks for it to the one who gave it. That practice, sustained over time, is one of the most powerful antidotes to anxiety that exists, not because it eliminates the difficulty of your circumstances, but because it changes the way you stand in the middle of them. The person who has learned to receive good things as gifts is not destroyed by the loss of them, because they were never using those things to hold themselves together in the first place. And the person who can genuinely enjoy the ordinary goodness of an ordinary day is not empty on the days when the extraordinary is absent, because they have discovered that the extraordinary has been hidden in the ordinary all along. Lesson 14. Better things. The wisdom of morning. Ecclesiastes 7:1-4. A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of one's birth. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to his heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by the sadness of the countenance the heart is made better. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. This is one of the most radically countercultural sections of Ecclesiastes. In a world that treats mourning as something to be minimized, abbreviated, managed, and moved on from as quickly as possible, that provides medication for grief and social awkwardness around death, and a cultural implication that the healthy person is always fundamentally fine. The preacher's calm insistence that the house of mourning is better than the house of feasting lands with the force of something genuinely subversive. He is not recommending that you seek out grief for its own sake. He is not suggesting that joy is less valuable than sorrow or that celebration has no place. He is making a more precise and more important observation about where wisdom is most readily found, and what he has observed from a life of watching human beings and paying close attention to what actually forms their character and deepens their faith and strips away what is superficial to reveal what is essential, is that mourning does something in the human soul that feasting cannot do. In the house of feasting, the surfaces are polished, the performance of joy is maintained, the difficult questions can be drowned in noise and laughter and the pleasant company of people who are also performing. You can leave a feast, having spent several hours not once touching anything that is truly real about yourself or about the people around you, and you can call that a good time. And in its season, it is. But it does not make you wiser. It does not make you kinder. It does not force the reckoning with mortality that produces genuine humility and genuine compassion. It passes pleasantly and leaves things essentially as they were. But in the house of mourning, something different happens. The performances drop. The polished surfaces fall away. Death, which our culture works so hard to keep at a sanitized distance, is suddenly right there, immediate and real and impossible to aestheticize. And in that presence, everything that usually seems so urgently important is suddenly revealed to be minor. And everything that usually gets pushed aside by busyness is suddenly the only thing worth talking about. The old argument that seemed so important to win, the misunderstanding that was allowed to fester because neither party wanted to be the one to reach out, the love that was felt but left unexpressed because there always seemed to be time later. In the house of mourning, the truth of what matters rushes back. The preacher says the living will lay it to their heart. That is the work of mourning well. Not to be crushed by grief, the preacher does not endorse despair, but to let the reality of mortality do its proper work of clarifying, of stripping, of ordering. To come out of the house of mourning knowing something you did not know when you entered, or knowing it again, more deeply, more permanently. Knowing how brief this is, how precious, how worth living with your whole heart rather than the fraction of your heart that is not otherwise occupied with lesser things. The person who has learned to face mortality honestly and to let that facing deepen rather than darken their life is a different kind of person. They are less distracted by the trivial, less imprisoned by the fear of what others think, less willing to leave the important words unsaid, less easily paralyzed by the anxiety of uncertainty because the worst thing has already been looked in the face and found to be, in the hands of a faithful God, not the worst thing after all. Lesson 15. The protection of wisdom. Ecclesiastes 7:11-12. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, and by it there is profit to them that see the sun. For wisdom is a defense, and money is a defense, but the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom giveth life to them that have it. The preacher has been honest throughout the book about the real, practical value of money. He is not a romantic who pretends that financial resources do not matter or that the lack of them creates no genuine suffering. He is a realist. Money, he acknowledges, provides protection. It buys options. It solves practical problems. It creates a degree of buffer between a person and the more brutal edges of material difficulty. He honors that honestly. But he places alongside money another form of protection, one that is qualitatively different, that operates at a different level of the human experience, and that money cannot buy or replace: wisdom. And the comparison he draws is worth examining carefully. Both money and wisdom are defenses, but the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom gives life to those who have it. Money can protect you from many external threats, from hunger, from cold, from the immediate consequences of certain practical failures, from some emergencies, from some forms of vulnerability that come from having nothing to fall back on. These are real protections, and the preacher does not minimize them, but wisdom protects you from the inside. It guards you from the decisions that destroy lives from within. The bad choice made in a moment of pride or fear or short-sightedness, the missed opportunity that was right in front of you but that you could not see because you lacked the eyes to recognize it, the relationship fractured by a careless word, the path taken in the wrong direction for years before the error became clear. No amount of money shields you from these. The wealthiest person in any room can still make a decision from pride that ruins everything they have built, can still destroy a relationship with cruelty or thoughtlessness, can still walk a path that leads away from everything that actually mattered. Wisdom navigates these from the inside. It is the capacity to perceive what is actually happening below the surface of a situation, to know when to speak and when to stay silent, to recognize the season you are in and what it requires of you, to see the consequences of actions before they are taken rather than after, to know the difference between what you want to do and what you should do, and to have the character to choose the latter. And the wisdom that the preacher is ultimately describing, the wisdom that gives life rather than merely protecting it, is the wisdom that is rooted in the fear of the Lord. That begins in reverence toward God, is shaped by attention to His word, grows through honest self-examination and genuine prayer, and produces a person who can navigate the complexity and uncertainty of human life with a groundedness that comes not from their own cleverness, but from their relationship with the one who designed life in the first place and knows how it works from the inside. Lesson 16. When life does not go according to plan, Ecclesiastes 7:13-14. Consider the work of God, for who can make that straight, which he hath made crooked? In the day of prosperity be joyful, but in the day of adversity consider. God also hath set the one over against the other, to the end that man should find nothing after him. There are things in your life that will not be straightened by human effort. There are circumstances that cannot be fixed, cannot be argued into a better shape, cannot be improved by working harder, or praying more eloquently, or finding the right person to intervene on your behalf. Some of what has been woven into the fabric of your story is crooked, difficult, painful, confusing, not what you would have chosen, not what you feel you deserve, and no amount of human striving will bend it back to the shape you prefer. The preacher does not explain why. He does not offer a neat theological framework that makes every crooked thing feel fine. He simply makes the observation, with his characteristic honest clarity, that some things in the work of God are beyond the capacity of human hands to straighten, and he offers, alongside that observation, a counsel for how to live faithfully in the presence of what cannot be changed. In days of prosperity, be joyful. Do not let the awareness that adversity will eventually come, because it will for everyone without exception, steal the legitimate joy of the good season when it is here. Do not preemptively mourn the gifts you have been given by spending the season of their presence dreading their departure. Receive them, be fully in them. Let the goodness of the good season be genuinely good. Do not let your worry about tomorrow steal the gift of today. And in days of adversity, consider. Think carefully, pay attention, reflect. Do not simply survive the hard season and wait for it to pass. Be present in it. Listen for what it is teaching you. Look for what God might be doing in it that you cannot yet see from the inside. Because the adversity is not simply something to endure. It is something to learn from, something that is working in you if you let it, a quality of character and depth of faith that the comfortable season could not have produced. The fire that feels like destruction may also be the furnace in which you are being refined. This is one of the most demanding invitations in Ecclesiastes, to be present and attentive in the hard season rather than simply enduring it from behind the walls of emotional self-protection. To trust that the God who appointed this season is working in it with purpose, even when that purpose is completely invisible to you. That is not passive resignation. It is active, courageous, costly trust. Lesson 17, the limits of what you can understand. Ecclesiastes 8:16-17. Then I beheld all the work of God, that man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun, because though a man labor to seek it out, yet he shall not find it. Yea, further, though a wise man think to know it, yet shall he not be able to find it. The preacher spent his entire life pursuing understanding. He applied himself to wisdom with an intensity that left him sleepless. He watched and reflected and questioned and analyzed with everything he had. And what he arrived at, after all that effort and all that seeking, is one of the most honestly humble conclusions in the history of human thought. There are things about the work of God in this world that the human mind, however brilliant and however diligent, cannot find out, cannot fully grasp, cannot reduce to a system or a framework or a formula that satisfies. This is not a counsel toward intellectual laziness. It is not permission to stop thinking or stop seeking or stop trying to understand. The preacher himself never stopped. What it is a counsel toward a particular kind of peace, the peace that becomes available to you when you genuinely release the demand that God explain himself to your satisfaction before you will trust him. One of the heaviest loads that earnest, spiritually serious people carry is the load of needing to understand everything God is doing. The pressure to have a theological answer for every suffering, an explanation for every unanswered prayer, a framework that accounts for every anomaly in their experience of God. And when those explanations do not come, When prayer goes apparently unanswered, when the crooked things stay crooked, when the righteous suffer and the wicked prosper and the logic simply does not work out, the absence of explanation can shake faith more severely than almost anything else. The preacher is not offering an explanation. He's offering something more honest and ultimately more useful. The acknowledgement that the explanations are beyond us. Not because God is indifferent or incompetent, but because his purposes are vast beyond our comprehension. His timescale is larger than a single human lifetime, and the connections he is making between events and seasons and generations and hearts are simply not visible from our vantage point. And what that means, practically in the daily life of a person who is trying to trust God in the presence of things they do not understand, is that faith is not the absence of unanswered questions. Faith is the willingness to trust the character of the one who holds the answers even when you cannot see them yourself. It is the posture of a child who does not understand every decision their loving parent makes, but who has enough evidence of that parent's love and faithfulness to trust the decisions that cannot yet be explained. That is the faith Ecclesiastes is inviting you toward, not the faith of someone who has all the answers, the faith of someone who knows and trusts the one who does. Lesson 18. Death, the great equalizer, and the greater hope. Ecclesiastes 9:2-3. All things come alike to all. There is one event to the righteous and to the wicked, to the good and to the clean and to the unclean. This is an evil among all things that are done under the sun, that there is one event unto all. The preacher confronts here, with his characteristic unflinching honesty, one of the most fundamental and most unsettling realities of human existence. Death is coming, and it is coming for everyone. Not just for the wicked or the reckless or the faithless, but for the righteous, the careful, the devoted, the ones who have prayed every morning and served faithfully every day and loved God with all they had. For all of them, without exception, without accommodation, without a discount for good behavior. And the preacher calls this an evil. Not in the sense that God has done something wrong or acted unjustly. The preacher's whole book is built on trust in the justice of God. But in the sense that from the human perspective, from the inside of a life being lived, the absolute universality of death feels profoundly wrong. Like a rule that should have an exception and does not. Like a boundary that should be negotiable for those who have earned it and is not. He does not rush past this observation or soften it with easy comfort. He lets it sit. He lets you feel the weight of it. And that is itself a form of pastoral wisdom. Because one of the things that erodes trust in God is the suspicion that the faith requires you to pretend that hard things are not hard, that dark things are not dark, that the fear of death is a spiritual failure rather than a human reality. Ecclesiastes refuses that pretense. It lets the hard thing be hard. And in doing so, it creates space for a more honest and more durable trust. Because we read Ecclesiastes on the other side of an event the preacher could not yet see. We read it knowing what happened on the first day of a week outside Jerusalem, in a garden, at a tomb that was found empty. We read it knowing that the one who entered death, voluntarily, deliberately, sacrificially, walked back out of it. That death was not the end of the story, but the turning point of it, that the one who promises life to those who trust him did not make that promise from a comfortable distance, but paid for it with his own body. That what the preacher correctly identified as an evil, the death that comes for every righteous person, was swallowed up by the death of the one who was fully righteous and needed not to die, who died so that death would have no permanent claim on those who belong to him. The preacher can see the problem. He articulates it with devastating clarity, but he could not yet see the solution in its fullness. We can. And the hope that is available to us on this side of Easter is not a denial of the preacher's observation. It is the answer to it. Death is real. Death is coming for everyone. And for those who belong to the God who conquered it, death is not the end. Lesson 19. Live with all your might. Ecclesiastes 9, 10, 11. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. For there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave, whither thou goest. I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, but time and chance happeneth to them all. From the honest confrontation with death, the preacher draws not despair, but urgency. Not a counsel of passivity or resignation in the face of mortality, but a call to the most fully engaged, most wholehearted, most present kind of living. Because the grave is coming, and in the grave there is no more work to do, no more wisdom to offer, no more love to give. The time to act is now. The time to love is now. The time to do with all your might whatever your hand finds to do is today, in this season, in this body, with these particular people, in this exact set of circumstances. Whatsoever your hand finds to do, notice the breadth of that, not just the grand and significant things, not just the things that will be remembered or celebrated or noticed, but whatever, the small thing, the ordinary thing, the unglamorous thing that needs doing, and that your hand is the hand that is there to do it. Do it with all your might. Do it with the full investment of your attention and your care and your intention. Do it as though it matters, because everything done with genuine love and genuine faithfulness, in the name of the God who sees every act, however small, does matter. Nothing done well and honestly and lovingly is wasted, not ever. But the preacher adds to this exhortation a crucial qualifier that saves it from becoming a counsel of ego-driven striving. The race is not always to the swift. The battle is not always to the strong. Success is not simply the mechanical output of effort and skill. There are forces at work in every situation, what the preacher calls time and chance, and what we might call the sovereign purposes of God, that mean outcomes are not entirely within your control, no matter how capable or how diligent you are. This is liberation in the guise of a limitation, because it means that you are responsible for the effort and not responsible for the outcome. You are called to show up fully, to bring everything you have, to do with all your might, whatever your hand finds to do. And then, and this is where the peace enters, you release the outcome. You place it in the hands of the one who holds time and chance and the turning of all things. You do your part with complete commitment. You leave God's part to God, and you trust that He is working in the gap between your faithful effort and the outcomes you cannot control. This is not passivity. It is the most active and the most faithful form of human engagement available to a person who genuinely trusts God. Work hard, care deeply, love well, and let the results be His. Lesson 20. The courage to act before the conditions are perfect. Ecclesiastes 11, 1-6. Cast thy bread upon the waters, for thou shalt find it after many days. He that observeth the wind shall not sow, and he that regardeth the cloud shall not reap. In the morning sow thy seed, and in the evening withhold not thine hand, for thou knowest not whether shall prosper, either this or that, or whether they both shall be alike good. Here is one of the most practically powerful passages in Ecclesiastes for anyone who has been paralyzed by the need for certainty before they can act. And that group is larger than you might think, because the fear of acting without guaranteed outcomes is one of the most common, most socially acceptable, and most spiritually disguised forms of anxiety that exists. We call it wisdom, we call it prudence, we call it being responsible. And sometimes it is those things, but sometimes, perhaps more often than we like to admit, it is simply fear wearing a respectable coat. Cast your bread upon the waters. This is an image of generosity and trust acting together. releasing something into a medium that offers no guarantees, sending it out into a place where you cannot control what happens to it, with the quiet confidence that it will return. Not necessarily in the form you expected, not necessarily in the time frame you preferred, but that the casting was not foolish. That it was the right act in the right moment, regardless of what could be seen or predicted from the shoreline. He that observes the wind shall not sow. The person who waits for perfect conditions, who monitors all the possible risks, who needs all the variables resolved before they take a single step, who requires certainty before they will commit to anything, will never plant. And if they never plant, they will never harvest. The safety they were trying to protect through their caution becomes the very thing their caution destroys. They avoid the risk of planting and fail, but in avoiding it, they guarantee the outcome they most feared, a life without harvest. The invitation here is to trust-fueled action, not reckless, not thoughtless, not the kind of impulsiveness that ignores wisdom entirely, but action taken in the presence of uncertainty, with a sincere dependence on God for the outcome, with the willingness to be wrong and the courage to try anyway. Morning and evening, the bookends of the day, sow your seed. Do the faithful work. Take the honest step. Give the honest gift. Speak the necessary word. Begin the thing you have been afraid to begin. And trust that the God who makes the bones grow in the womb, who is working in all the invisible, ungovernable processes of life simultaneously, is also working in the outcome of your faithful, courageous action. Lesson 21. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth. Ecclesiastes 12:1. Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. The preacher turns here to address the young with a counsel that manages to be both liberating and sobering at the same time. He tells them to rejoice in their youth, to enjoy the energy and vitality and openness of this season, to walk in the desires of their heart, and to take in the beauty the world offers. This is not permission to be reckless. The reminder of judgment makes that clear. But it is a genuine affirmation that youth is a gift to be lived fully, not a period to be merely survived until adulthood arrives. But alongside the encouragement to enjoy, the preacher plants a seed of awareness. Youth is hevel, it is breath. It passes faster than anyone in their youth can believe. The energy you have now, the options that are open to you now, the particular quality of openness and possibility that belongs to this season, these are not permanent. They will give way to the next season and then the next. This is not said to create anxiety. It is said to create urgency, to prompt the young person and the not-so-young person who still has time and capacity to take seriously the question of how they will use their strength and their years. Because the person who enters the later seasons of life with a history of faithful, genuine, growing relationship with God is a very different person from the one who spent their strength on things that turned out to be vapor. The time to establish the foundations is now. The time to begin the habits that will carry you through every season of life. The habit of prayer, the habit of scripture, the habit of genuine worship, the habit of honest community is not when things get difficult and you feel the urgency of need. It is now, while the soil of your heart is still responsive, while the forming is still happening, while the investments you make in the direction of God can compound over decades rather than being started at the last moment. Remember your Creator now. Before the busyness becomes all-consuming, before the patterns are set in directions that leave no room for Him, before the window narrows. Come to God now, genuinely, honestly, fully. And let the relationship you build in these days carry you through every season, including the ones that will demand everything you have. Lesson 22. The honest portrait of aging and the promise beyond it. Ecclesiastes 12:3-7. In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few. Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it. This passage is one of the most remarkable extended metaphors in all of literature. The preacher describes the approach of old age and ultimately of death through a sustained and exquisitely crafted series of images. The keepers of the house that tremble, the hands and arms no longer steady, the strong men that bow themselves, the legs bearing weight with increasing difficulty, the grinders that cease, the teeth diminished by time, those that look out of the windows and are darkened, the eyes, their sight growing dim, the doors shut in the streets, the ears closing to the sounds of the world. The preacher watches the body close, one faculty at a time, with the careful attention of someone who has spent a life paying attention to what is real. And what he describes is neither romanticized nor minimized. It is simply, honestly, tenderly observed. This is the body, this is the physical story that every human being who lives long enough will experience in their own flesh. And the preacher does not look away from it. He honors the reality of it. He sits with it. But then, and this is everything, he adds the part that changes the whole account. The dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns unto God who gave it. The body is dust. It came from the earth and it returns to the earth. But the spirit, the essential eternal part of the human person, the part that God breathed into humanity in the beginning, the part that carries the image of God and the capacity for relationship with God and the longing for eternity. The spirit does not return to the earth. It returns to God, to the one who gave it, to the home it was always homesick for. This is not the whole of the Bible's teaching on resurrection and eternal life. The preacher is writing before the New Testament fills in the fuller picture of what awaits those who belong to God. But even here, in this ancient wisdom, the trajectory is clear. You are more than your body. The physical decline is real, but it is not the whole story. The ending that is visible, the dust returning to dust, is not the final word. The spirit has a destination, and that destination is the God who made it, who loves it, who has been preparing a place for it since before the foundation of the world. Lesson 23. Words that last. The reliability of truth. Ecclesiastes 12:9-11. The preacher sought to find out acceptable words, and that which was written was upright, even words of truth. The words of the wise are as goads, and as nails fastened by the masters of assemblies, which are given from one shepherd. Toward the end of the book, there is a brief and beautiful reflection on the nature of wisdom and words themselves. The preacher sought for the right words, not the easy words, not the flattering words, not the impressive words, but the acceptable words, the upright ones, the ones that were true. And he shaped that truth into language that could be received, that could be understood, that could do its proper work in the hearts of those who needed to hear it. The words of the wise are as goads, instruments that prompt movement, that press gently but persistently against comfortable stasis, that refuse to let you remain exactly where you are when exactly where you are is not where you need to be. Good words, true words, words born from genuine wisdom and genuine care for the person who will receive them. These do not always land softly. They press, they challenge, they create a productive discomfort that is not cruelty but love, not harshness but the specific form of care that refuses to let a person settle into a comfortable distance from what is true. And the words of the wise are as nails fastened by the masters of assemblies, things that hold, that do not come loose when the pressure is applied, that are driven in deep enough to bear weight, to provide secure attachment for the weight of a real life with all its real difficulty and complexity. The words of Ecclesiastes, received honestly and responded to honestly, are not merely interesting reflections. They are intended to hold you, to give you something to grip when the storm comes, to give the ship of your faith an anchor deep enough to hold in waters rough enough to test everything that has not been secured, given from one shepherd. All of this whole extraordinary, honest, complex, tender book comes from a single source, from the God who made you and knows you and is reaching toward you through every wise word that was ever written down, trying to find you where you actually are, trying to speak into your actual situation rather than the managed version of it, trying to lead you toward the life you were made for in every season of the human journey, from birth to death to whatever lies beyond. Lesson 24. The warning against knowledge that never becomes life. Ecclesiastes 12:12. And further, by these, my son, be admonished, of making many books there is no end, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. The preacher offers here, with characteristic honesty, a warning that students of scripture and theology and religious writing would do well to receive with genuine seriousness. There is no end to the making of books. There is no bottom to the amount that can be read, the number of perspectives that can be studied, the quantity of theological frameworks that can be explored and debated and compared. The library of human religious thought is vast and growing, and engaging seriously with it, carefully, prayerfully, honestly, can be an enormous gift to faith and character and wisdom. But the pursuit of more information, more frameworks, more theological sophistication can itself become a form of avoidance, a way of remaining perpetually in the posture of learning and never actually arriving in the posture of living. A way of filling the mind with a growing and impressive architecture of religious knowledge, while the heart remains essentially unchanged and the life remains essentially untransformed. Of knowing more and more about God without ever actually knowing God, which is a different thing entirely and a more important one. The warning is not against study. The preacher himself was a devoted and serious student of wisdom his entire life. The warning is against study as a substitute for the thing study is supposed to lead to, because the knowledge that matters, the knowledge that is actually worth having, that changes anything, that makes a person wiser and kinder and more faithful and more free, is not the knowledge that lives in your head as an accumulation of facts and frameworks. It is the knowledge that has worked its way down into your character, into the daily choices you make when no one is watching, into how you treat the difficult person in your life, into how you respond to injustice, into how you handle the season of prosperity without losing your soul in it, and the season of adversity without losing your faith in it. That knowledge is not primarily acquired by reading more books. It is acquired by living faithfully, day after day, in genuine and honest and humble communion with the God who is not primarily a subject of study, but a person who is knowable, deeply, intimately, permanently knowable, and who wants to be known by you, not just known about. Lesson 25, Fear God, the conclusion of everything. Ecclesiastes 12:13-14. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God, and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. And here we arrive, the end of the search, the conclusion of the whole matter. The answer that the wisest person who ever lived reached after exhausting every other possible avenue, after walking every road that human achievement, human pleasure, human knowledge, and human wisdom can lead down, after testing every alternative, after refusing to accept easy answers, and pressing all the way to the bottom of every barrel of human experience. After all of that, he arrives here. 2 sentences. 1 conclusion. Fear God. Keep his commandments. This is the whole duty of man. Let yourself be struck by the simplicity of this, not the shallowness of it, the simplicity. These are very different things. The simplicity here is not the simplicity of something that has not been thought through. It is the simplicity that appears on the other side of extraordinary complexity, the clarity that only comes after you have followed every alternative to its limit and found it wanting. It is the simplicity of someone who has earned the right to speak simply because they have been all the way to where complexity leads, and come back knowing that the answer was never in the complexity. Fear God, not the cowering terror of a slave who has been beaten into submission, not the performance of religious observance from a heart that is secretly elsewhere, not the compliance of someone who is afraid of punishment, but the genuine, deep, freely chosen, intelligent reverence of a creature standing in honest recognition before its creator. The awe of something finite in the presence of something infinite and entirely good. The willingness to acknowledge, in the daily decisions of your actual life, not just in the creed you recite on Sunday mornings, that God is God and you are not. That His understanding is not a larger version of your understanding, but a fundamentally different category of thing. That His ways are not merely better than your ways, but are beyond the reach of your ways in their wisdom and their faithfulness and their love. Fear God means living with God as the actual center of your actual life. Not the stated center, not the theological center, not the center you intend to make Him as soon as things settle down, but the real center, the one from whom your values actually flow, the one whose opinion of your choices actually matters more to you than anyone else's. The one you consult first, not last. The one whose character actually shapes the way you treat people, the way you use your money, the way you speak about people who are absent, the way you behave in the dark when no one is watching. Keep His commandments, not as a mechanism for earning salvation, not as a scorecard by which you measure your own worthiness, not as a burden to be carried with resentment, but as the natural and joyful expression of a life genuinely oriented toward the God who gave those commandments for your good. Because the commandments of God are not arbitrary restrictions designed by a distant deity to limit your freedom. They are the instructions of a designer who knows exactly how what he built was meant to work. They are the loving guidance of a father who knows the paths that lead to flourishing and the paths that lead to destruction, and wants desperately for you to take the right ones. They are the blueprint for the life you were actually made for. And then the final word: God shall bring every work into judgment, every act, every word, every intention of every heart, everything done in the light and everything done in the dark, every kindness extended and every cruelty inflicted, every faithful prayer and every moment of deliberate rebellion, everything, without exception, with perfect accuracy, by the one who sees all things and forgets nothing, and whose justice is not approximate but perfect and complete. This is not written to terrify. It is written to orient, to anchor, to remind you that your life is not a private experiment with no consequences beyond your own experience. That the choices you make matter in ways that extend far beyond what any human eye can see or any human accounting can measure. That the small acts of faithfulness that no one notices, the daily prayer, the quiet generosity, the choice to be honest when dishonesty would have been easier, the decision to treat someone with dignity when you could have dismissed them, all of these are seen and known and will one day be recognized by the one who was watching when no one else was. Fear God and keep His commandments. This is not a diminishment of human life. It is the definition of it, the whole duty of man. Everything else, every achievement, every relationship, every season, every question, every struggle, every joy finds its meaning and its weight and its proper place when it is lived within this fundamental orientation. When God is genuinely first, everything else is rightly ordered. When He is not, everything else, however impressive from the outside, is, in the preacher's honest word, hevel, vapor. The peace that passes understanding. Before we draw this long and unhurried study to its close, I want to take a moment to speak directly and personally to whoever is carrying something particularly heavy right now. Some of you came to this video from a place of real darkness, a diagnosis that frightened you, a relationship that is fracturing in ways you cannot stop, a grief that has not lifted even after a long time of carrying it, a financial pressure so constant and so heavy that you have nearly forgotten what it feels like to breathe freely, a loneliness that is more profound than the kind that comes from being physically alone, the kind that comes from being surrounded by people and still feeling fundamentally unseen, an anxiety that has been your companion for so long that you have stopped thinking of it as something that could change and have begun to think of it as simply what you are. I want you to hear something from the bottom of this book and from the bottom of everything the preacher spent his life searching for and finally found. The peace that Ecclesiastes points toward is not the peace of a perfect life. The preacher did not have a perfect life. He experienced injustice and confusion and the weight of wisdom and the grief of watching things he loved fall short of what he hoped they would be. He lived in a complicated world full of complicated people. He carried questions that did not have tidy answers. He was not writing from a cushioned distance from real human suffering. The peace he is pointing toward is the peace that does not depend on circumstances. Not the absence of trouble, but the presence of the God who holds trouble in his sovereign and faithful hands. The peace of a person who has genuinely surrendered the things they cannot control, released them, laid them down, entrusted them to the one who can, and received in exchange the only thing that actually does the work that peace is supposed to do, the companionship and the faithfulness and the love of the living God. That peace is available to you, not as a reward for having figured everything out or resolved all your doubts or achieved a certain level of spiritual maturity. As a gift, the direct result of the simplest and most profound act available to a human being, turning toward God, honestly, humbly, without pretense and without performance, and without demanding that he explain himself first. Turning toward him and saying whatever is actually true, I do not understand this. I cannot carry this. I do not have the answers. I have tried everything I know to try and it is not enough, but you are enough and I choose you. That choice, made not once and done but over and over, in every season, on every morning, in every moment of clarity and every moment of darkness, is the whole duty of man. And it is the path to the kind of life that the preacher spent his entire remarkable existence looking for and found, in the end, right where God had always been waiting to offer it. Carrying these lessons forward, the book of Ecclesiastes is not a book you simply finish. It is a book you return to, at different points in your life, from different places of experience, with different questions pressing. And you find each time that it has something new to offer you, because you are different. The verse that passed over you on your first reading becomes the verse that undoes you on your fifth, because in the intervening years you lived something that gave it weight and texture it did not have before. What does it look like to carry these lessons forward? Not as abstract theological positions, but as lived, practiced wisdom that actually changes the way you move through your days. It looks like slowing down, not abandoning responsibility or neglecting the legitimate demands of your life, but building into each day enough quiet that God can actually be heard. This is not a luxury. It is the fundamental requirement of a life oriented toward the God who speaks in the still small voice rather than in the earthquake and the fire. If you never create the conditions in which he can be heard, you will spend your life not hearing him and calling that silence evidence of his absence. The silence is not his absence. It is the noise of your life, which is in your power to at least partially address. It looks like receiving what you have with gratitude rather than always reaching for what you do not yet have. It means refusing to postpone the enjoyment of God's goodness in your present life until some future condition is met. That you eat the meal with thanksgiving rather than eating it while worrying about tomorrow's meal. That you love the people in front of you fully rather than abstractly while waiting for better circumstances in which to love them. That you receive this day, this ordinary, imperfect, specific day, as the gift it actually is. It looks like releasing the outcomes you cannot control, doing your work faithfully, sowing in the morning and in the evening, casting your bread on the waters, using your hand for what it finds to do with all your might, and then genuinely trusting the results to the one who holds time and chance and the working of all things together for the good of those who love him. That release is not passive. It is one of the most active and most courageous things a person can do, because the ego fights it constantly, the anxiety fights it constantly, the desperate need to manage what cannot be managed fights it every single day. And yet, to genuinely release, to open your hands and let the outcomes be God's, is to enter the room where peace actually lives. It looks like pursuing genuine wisdom over impressive knowledge, reading widely, thinking deeply, engaging seriously with Scripture and with the questions it raises, but then living what you know, being transformed by what you study, letting the knowledge work its way down from the head into the hands, into the daily choices and the daily kindnesses and the daily faithfulness that is not dramatic, but is the substance of a life actually lived for God. And it looks like fixing your ultimate hope not on the temporary things, however beautiful and however genuinely good they are, but on the eternal things, on the God who is not vapor, on the love that does not depend on your circumstances, on the promises that do not expire, on the home that is being prepared for those who fear him and walk with him. A final word to you. If you have spent this time with Ecclesiastes, all of it, or even a significant part of it, then something has happened in you that I pray will continue to unfold long after this video ends. The words of the preacher work slowly. They are designed to. They are goads and nails, not hammers. They make their way in gently and then they hold. And the things they are holding you to, the truth of God's sufficiency, the lightness of released control, the beauty of genuine reverence, the peace of a life genuinely surrendered, these are things worth being held to. Every single day, whatever season you are in right now, whether it is a season of prosperity where the temptation is to stop depending on God because things seem fine, or a season of difficulty where the temptation is to doubt God because things are not fine, the answer is the same. Fear God, walk with him, keep his commandments not as a burden but as a path. Receive the good gifts he places in your hands with gratitude and hold them loosely. Do your work faithfully and release the outcomes to the one who holds time and chance. Be present with the people he has given you. Speak honestly. Act with integrity whether or not anyone is watching. Build your life on the foundation that the vapors of this world cannot touch, because it is older than this world and will outlast it. And know this, the God you are trusting is not a distant philosophical concept. He is not an abstract theological principle. He is the God who knows the number of hairs on your head, who sees every sparrow that falls, who set eternity in your heart precisely because he intends for those who walk with him to one day fulfill it, who has not forgotten your name or your story or the specific weight of the specific thing you are carrying today, who is working right now in every part of your life that you can see and in every part you cannot, with a faithfulness and a love that do not depend on your circumstances or your feelings or your level of understanding at any given moment. He is enough. He has always been enough. And everything the preacher discovered, at the bottom of pleasure, at the limit of achievement, at the edge of wisdom, in the dust of everything he built and lost and loved and mourned, Everything he discovered points, without exception, to the same inexhaustible truth. God is enough. Fear him, walk with him. He is the whole duty of man, and he is more than enough for the whole of your life. Thank you. From the absolute bottom of my heart, thank you for being here for this entire journey. If you made it this far, you are someone who is genuinely serious about walking deeper in your faith, and I have nothing but respect and gratitude for that. Before you close this video, I'm asking you sincerely, please subscribe to this channel if you have not already. Turn on the notification bell so that every time new content is published, you are the first to know. These long, deep, unhurried walks through the books of the Bible take significant time and care to put together, and they exist for one reason: to serve you, to serve your faith, to give you something you can come back to in any season and find nourishment for your soul. If that matters to you, subscribe, turn on the bell. And if this video meant something to you, if something shifted, if something that had been tight inside you loosened a little, please like this video. It takes 1 second, and it tells the platforms that this kind of content is worth putting in front of more people who genuinely need it. And please share it. Think right now of one person in your life who is carrying something heavy. Someone who is exhausted or confused or anxious or searching for something they cannot name. Send this video to them. You do not need to explain it or add commentary. Just share it. You may never know what it means to them, but God knows, and He can use it. There is so much more ahead on this channel, more long, careful, extended studies of the great books of the Bible, more hours of content designed not to rush you or perform for you, but to simply sit with you in the Word and let it do what only it can do. Subscribe so that you do not miss what is coming. And to everyone who is part of this global community, everyone watching from every city, every country, every time zone, every language, every stage of life and faith, you are part of something extraordinary. A family gathered around the ancient and living Word of God. That is not a small thing, that is a remarkable thing. And I am genuinely grateful for every single one of you. Go with the peace of God, the peace that surpasses all understanding, the peace that guards your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. May the wisdom of this extraordinary book work in you slowly and surely and permanently in every season that lies ahead. God bless you, and I will see you in the next video. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Ecclesiastes 12:15. Você disse, it's still too short, it's still too short. Instead of ending it, I need you to add another 60,000 characters to the video. Type 11 Claude respondu, let me check the current count, and then write the additional 60,000 characters. Let me check the current count, and then write the additional 60,000 characters. Executou 3 comandos. Executou 3 comandos, datando 325 characters. Well past the 180,000 target, original 120k plus additional 60k. Here is all the new content added to the script. Going deeper, the architecture of anxiety and the wisdom that dismantles it. We have now walked through the primary lessons of Ecclesiastes together, moving from the opening declaration of vanity to the final anchoring call to fear God and keep His commandments. But there is more to be said. There is always more to be said when the text is this rich, when the human condition it addresses is this complex, when the people listening are carrying the particular kinds of burdens that belong to this particular moment in history. So I want to go deeper with you, not to repeat what has already been said, but to take several of the most critical threads from Ecclesiastes and follow them further than we did in the initial walkthrough. To press into the places where this ancient wisdom meets the very specific, very contemporary shape of the anxiety and the chaos and the exhaustion that so many people are currently carrying. Because there is a particular architecture to modern anxiety, it is not simply a general feeling of unease, it has structure. It has specific shapes and specific causes and specific lies it tells. And if you understand those lies clearly enough, you have a chance of dismantling them before they fully dismantle you. Ecclesiastes speaks into that architecture with a precision that can feel, at times, almost impossibly relevant for a text written 3,000 years ago. The world is different. The noise is different. The distractions are different. But the human heart that is anxious today is not fundamentally different from the human heart that was anxious in Solomon's time. It is hungry for the same things. It is vulnerable to the same false promises. It reaches for the same inadequate substitutes. And it needs the same ancient, eternal, completely sufficient truth. Let us go deeper. The first architectural lie. The future is in your hands. One of the most foundational lies that anxiety builds its structure on is the lie that the future is fundamentally yours to manage, and that if something goes wrong, it will be because you failed to manage it adequately. This lie is so deeply embedded in the assumptions of modern life, particularly in achievement-oriented Western cultures, that most people have never consciously identified it as a lie. It simply feels like responsibility, like being a functional adult, like taking your life seriously. But underneath the language of responsibility, this lie is working constantly, producing a particular kind of exhaustion that no amount of effort or planning or preparation can resolve. Because the future is not yours to manage. It never has been. No matter how carefully you plan, how thoroughly you prepare, how diligently you save and strategize and anticipate, there will always be things that happen outside the reach of your preparation, things you did not see coming, things that do not respond to your best efforts in the way your best efforts deserved. Things that simply happen without permission, without warning, and without regard for how hard you work to prevent them. Ecclesiastes confronts this lie directly and repeatedly. The race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong. Time and chance happen to them all. The clouds will do what the clouds will do. The wind will go where the wind goes. The future holds things that no wise person can fully anticipate, because no wise person is sovereign over it. And this is not said to produce paralysis. It is said to produce a particular kind of freedom, the freedom that comes from correctly understanding the limits of your jurisdiction. Because if the future is not entirely yours to manage, if the outcomes of your efforts are genuinely in the hands of a God who is working according to purposes larger than your planning, then you are not responsible for controlling what you cannot control. You are responsible for faithfulness, for honest effort, for showing up fully and doing your part with your whole heart. But the results, the actual outcomes of your life, belong to God. And He is more trustworthy with them than you could ever be. The person who genuinely absorbs this truth does not stop working. They do not become passive or indifferent or careless. What changes is the quality of their engagement. They work hard without the frantic, white-knuckled quality of someone who believes the whole edifice rests on them. They plan without the obsessive, sleepless quality of someone who is trying to account for every possible failure scenario. They hope without the desperate, brittle quality of someone whose hope depends on outcomes they cannot guarantee. They work, they plan, they hope, and then they sleep. Because the God who holds the future is awake, and He is good, and the burden of tomorrow has already been taken up by hands that are more than capable of carrying it. The second architectural lie. If you cannot see God working, He is not working. This is perhaps the most painful of the lies that anxiety and suffering conspire to tell. The lie of divine absence, the experience of praying and hearing nothing back, of waiting for clarity that does not come, of watching circumstances worsen despite your faithfulness, of looking for the hand of God in a situation and finding or seeming to find nothing there. And in that silence, anxiety whispers, He is not there. Or worse, he is there, but he has turned away from you specifically. Your particular suffering is too small, or too complicated, or too far gone for his attention. Your prayers have not been eloquent enough, or faithful enough, or sincere enough to penetrate whatever distance exists between you and the God you have been reaching toward. Ecclesiastes does not resolve this by explaining divine silence. It does not offer a theological formula that makes the experience of God's hiddenness emotionally comfortable. What it offers is something more honest and ultimately more useful: the acknowledgement that the work of God cannot be seen in its fullness from any human vantage point. Man cannot find out the work that God makes from beginning to end, not because the work is not happening, but because it is happening on a scale and through a logic that transcends human perception. The river keeps running toward the sea even when you cannot see the source. The seed keeps germinating underground even when there is nothing visible above the soil. The sun is still there behind the clouds on the overcast days when you cannot see it. What you cannot see is not the measure of what exists. What you cannot feel is not the measure of what is true. And the silence of God, as painful as it is in the experiencing of it, is not the absence of God. This is the faith that Ecclesiastes cultivates. Not the easy faith that sees God clearly and feels his presence warmly in every moment. That faith is real and it is a gift, but it is not always available in every season. The faith that Ecclesiastes is building is the faith that holds when the feelings are not there. The faith that trusts the character of the one who has been faithful in the past, even when the present season is not providing fresh evidence of that faithfulness. The faith that says, in the silence and the darkness and the confusion, I do not understand this. I cannot feel you right now, but I have not forgotten what I know about you. And I am not going to let what I cannot see in this moment override what I know to be true about you from the whole of my experience and the whole of the Scripture. That is not denial. That is not pretending everything is fine when it is not. That is the most courageous and most honest kind of faith that exists. The faith that chooses to trust in the dark. The faith that plants its seed even when it cannot see the sun. The faith that casts its bread on the waters even when the waters are rough and the return is nowhere in sight. And the preacher speaks from the other side of that choice. He has lived it. He has been in the dark places where wisdom does not resolve into comfort and observation does not resolve into clarity. And he is telling you from the other side, do not let the darkness tell you what the darkness cannot see. Fear God. Keep his commandments. Walk faithfully in the season you are in. The one who ordered the sunrise is not confused or absent. He is working, and what he is working toward is something worth waiting for. The third architectural lie: your worth depends on your productivity. This lie is particularly pervasive and particularly destructive in contemporary culture. The deep, mostly unconscious equation between a person's value and a person's output. The sense that you are worth what you produce, that your identity is located in your achievements, that the measure of a human life is what it accomplished and what it contributed and what it built. And the corresponding terror, the specific anxiety of the person who has stopped producing at full capacity, whether through illness or burnout or depression or simply a season of life that requires a different pace, that they have somehow become less than they were, that their worth has diminished along with their output. Solomon tested this equation directly and thoroughly. He produced more than any king of his time. He built and planted and gathered and accomplished on a scale that was extraordinary by any measure. And he sat down at the end of all that production and assessed its value with honest eyes. And what he found was not that it was worthless. The things he built and planted were genuinely good things, but that it was not the foundation of his worth. That his identity was not located in his achievements. that the hollow place inside him was not filled by what he had done or made or accumulated or accomplished. That the hunger, the persistent, real, important hunger that he had been trying to answer with production, was a hunger for something that production could not provide. The worth of a human being is not located in their productivity. It is located in their creatureliness, in the fact of having been made intentionally and lovingly by a God who does not make things he does not value. You were made in the image of God, not the productive image of God, not the successful image of God. The image, whatever you have accomplished or failed to accomplish this week, this year, this decade, your worth was established before any of it, and it is not revised by any of it. The God who made you valued you before you did a single useful thing, because the basis of your value is not what you have done, but what He has done, made you, loved you, and called you His own. This is not a counsel toward laziness or indifference to good work. The preacher, as we have seen, consistently affirms the value of honest effort and diligent engagement with the work that is in front of you. But there is a profound difference between working from a place of secure identity, working as an expression of who you are, rather than as an attempt to earn who you are, and working from a place of existential anxiety, where every output is a bid for worth that you do not yet feel, and every failure is a verdict on your fundamental value as a human being. The first kind of work is free. It is creative and generous and sustainable. The second kind of work is exhausting in a way that no amount of rest can fix, because the exhaustion is not in the body. It is in the soul that is trying to do something that cannot be done, earn through effort what can only be received as gift. You cannot earn your worth. You can only receive it. Receive it from the God who made you and called you good before you had done anything at all. And from that place of received, secure, unconditional worth, go and work faithfully. Not to earn His love, but because you have it. Not to justify your existence, but because your existence has already been justified by the one who breathed it into you. The fourth architectural lie: comparison is the path to clarity. One of the most reliable engines of anxiety in the modern world is comparison. The constant low-grade monitoring of where you stand relative to other people, how your life measures up, whether you are ahead or behind. Whether what you have achieved is impressive relative to what your peers have achieved, whether your circumstances are better or worse than the standard your social environment sets for what a successful life looks like at your age and in your category. The tools of comparison have never been more refined or more constantly available. Every platform, every feed, every notification is a freshly curated invitation to measure yourself against someone else's best presentation of their best moments. And the effect of this constant comparison is not clarity. It is not motivation. It is not the honest, accurate self-assessment that leads to wise decisions about how to direct your life. The effect is anxiety. A chronic, restless, low-grade anxiety that is never resolved because the comparison never settles. There is always someone doing something better, always someone further along, always some indicator by which you can conclude that you are falling short. Ecclesiastes addresses comparison not in a single verse, but through its entire architecture. Because the whole project of the book is the recovery of the right standard, the recovery of the only standard that is actually stable enough to give genuine direction, not the standard of what other people have or are doing or have achieved, not the standard of what your culture defines as success at your age, but the standard of the God who made you, knows you, and has a particular purpose for your particular life that cannot be mapped onto anyone else's. The preacher does not compare himself to other kings to establish his worth. He compares everything he has done and experienced and accumulated to the only standard that matters. Does it orient me toward God? Does it produce the fear of the Lord? Does it lead to the kind of life that the soul was actually made for? And by that standard, the only standard that holds, the race is not between you and your neighbor. It never was. It is between who you are now and who God is calling you to become. Between where you are in your relationship with Him and where He is inviting you deeper. When you take your eyes off the comparison and fix them on that standard, the standard of what it looks like for a human being made in the image of God to live in genuine reverence and genuine faithfulness and genuine communion with their Creator, the anxiety that comparison generates begins to quiet. Not because your circumstances have improved, not because you have suddenly surpassed the people you were comparing yourself to, but because the comparison has been revealed for what it always was, an attempt to establish worth through a method that was never designed to establish worth, using a standard that was never stable enough to give you a genuine result. Fear God. Keep His commandments. This is the whole duty of man, not the whole duty of man relative to other men. The whole duty, the entire thing. And it is entirely available to you in your specific circumstances, with your specific gifts and limitations, in your specific season. It does not require you to be further along than you are. It does not require you to have achieved more than you have. It simply requires that you turn toward the right direction and begin to walk. The fifth architectural lie: busyness is the same as meaning. There is a specific form of anxiety that is generated not by the fear of doing too little, but by the relentless compulsive doing of too much. The person who cannot be still, who fills every available space in their schedule and then discovers ways to make the spaces smaller so they can fill those too, who treats rest as laziness, silence as waste, and the absence of productivity as a personal failure, who is, in every objective sense, doing an enormous amount, and who still, in the quiet moments they cannot quite prevent, feels the hollowness that all the doing was partly designed to drown out. The preacher knows this person. He was this person. He did not simply dabble in achievement and pleasure and accumulation. He threw himself into them with the full force of an extraordinary will and extraordinary resources. He made the great works. He planted the vineyards. He gathered and built and created on a scale that left him objectively one of the most accomplished human beings who had ever lived. And in the honest moments between the projects, in the spaces that his restlessness could not quite fill, he felt the very thing that all the activity was partly designed to prevent him from feeling: the hollowness, the insufficiency, the vapor quality of everything he had done. Busyness is not meaning. Activity is not purpose. The full schedule is not the same as the full life. And one of the most important and most countercultural things that Ecclesiastes invites you to do is to slow down enough to ask the question that busyness is designed to prevent. Not what am I doing, but why am I doing it? Not what am I achieving, but toward what end? Not how much am I producing, but what am I actually building with the hours of this one life that I have been given? The preacher sat down in the middle of everything he was doing, and he asked that question. He was courageous enough to really ask it and honest enough to really hear the answer. And what he found is that the doing, divorced from the right orientation, was vapor. Beautiful vapor sometimes, impressive vapor often, but vapor nonetheless. The invitation is not to do less. It is to do everything you do from the right place, to bring the whole weight of your effort and your creativity and your energy into your work and your relationships and your service, but to do it from the inside of a genuine, honest, primary relationship with the God who gave you the capacity for all of it, to work as an act of worship, to rest as an act of trust, to be still sometimes, genuinely, intentionally, uncomfortably still, and to let God be God in the silence that you usually rush to fill. Ecclesiastes and the practice of genuine rest. We have spoken throughout this study about the invitation to rest that Ecclesiastes extends. The rest of the laborer who sleeps sweetly, the rest of the person who has released outcomes to God, the rest that is the reward of genuine trust. But I want to spend more time here because rest is one of the most countercultural and most needed practices available to a person who is serious about their faith, and it is one of the most consistently under-practiced. Rest is not the absence of activity. It is the presence of trust. It is what happens when you have genuinely accepted that God is God and you are not. When you have genuinely released the management of tomorrow into hands more capable than your own. When you have genuinely placed the outcomes of your effort into the care of the one who holds time and chance, and the working of all things together for the good of those who love him. When you can lie down at the end of a day and honestly say, I did what I could today. I did it faithfully, and now it belongs to God. That kind of rest is not lazy. It is deeply, profoundly courageous, because everything in the anxious person's system fights against it. Every unresolved problem volunteers its urgency. Every uncertain outcome presents its case for one more hour of worry. Every fear that you have not done enough, planned enough, prepared enough, will not let you be still. And to rest in the middle of all of that, to choose deliberately and repeatedly, to set down the management of what you cannot manage and breathe in the presence of the one who can, is one of the most spiritually significant acts available to a human being. Ecclesiastes affirms the rhythm of rest throughout its pages. The natural world rests in its cycles. The sun sets and rises again. The wind returns to its circuits. There is a time for everything, including a time to be still, a time to cease from striving, a time to let the ground lie fallow so that it can produce again when the next season comes. These cycles are not accidental, they are designed. The God who built rest into the rhythm of creation built it there because he knew that the creatures who were made in his image would need it, not just physically, though they would need it physically too, but spiritually, as an act of trust, as a regular practiced reminder that the world does not depend on their continuous management. If you are someone who struggles to rest, who carries the weight of tomorrow even into the nights and the quiet moments and the supposed days off, try this tonight. Before you try to sleep, take a few minutes to genuinely and intentionally release, not just to stop thinking about the problems, because telling an anxious mind to stop thinking is usually counterproductive, but to actively, prayerfully, honestly give back to God the things that you have been carrying that were never yours to carry in the first place. Name them. Say them out loud if that helps. This outcome that I cannot control, I give it to you. This person I'm worried about, I entrust them to your care. This situation that I've been managing and am no closer to resolving, I release it to the one who knows the end from the beginning. That is not weakness. That is the posture of someone who has understood the first and most important lesson of Ecclesiastes, that God is God and you are not, and that this is entirely good news. Ecclesiastes and the question of suffering. We cannot walk this deeply into Ecclesiastes without spending serious time on one of the most difficult subjects the book addresses, and one of the most difficult subjects in all of human experience: suffering. The suffering of people who do not deserve to suffer. The suffering that does not resolve into a lesson or a blessing or a clear before and after story. The suffering that is simply hard, that continues longer than seems right, that does not yield to prayer in the time frame or the manner that was hoped for. The preacher has seen this. He has watched the righteous suffer and the wicked prosper and the race go to someone other than the swift. He has sat with the injustice of a world that does not distribute difficulty and comfort according to moral merit. He does not have an easy answer for it, because there is no easy answer for it. What he has is honest observation and an anchor and a direction. The honest observation is that suffering does not discriminate based on faithfulness. Good people suffer. Faithful people suffer. People who have done everything right and loved God sincerely and served their community with genuine sacrifice, these people suffer. The preacher does not pretend otherwise, and he does not offer a theological formula that resolves the difficulty into something comfortable. He sits with it. He honors the reality of it. He lets the hard thing be hard. The anchor is the certainty of God's justice. Not as a formula that makes the suffering feel better now, but as a fact that prevents the suffering from becoming the final word on the character of God. The judge of all the earth will do right. The accounting will be complete. The suffering of every righteous person has been seen by eyes that do not close and has been recorded in a ledger that will not be closed until justice has been done. This does not make the suffering less painful, but it prevents it from being meaningless. It prevents it from being evidence that God does not care or that his faithfulness has failed, and the direction is toward God, in the midst of the suffering rather than after it. Not when you have the energy and the faith to approach him confidently, but now in the exhaustion and the confusion and the anger and the grief, just as you are. Because one of the most extraordinary claims of Scripture is that God is present in the suffering, not distant from it, not waiting for you to emerge from it before he will engage with you, but present within it. The Lord who walks with his people through the waters assures them that the waters will not overflow them. The one who is with them in the fire assures them that the flame will not kindle upon them. He does not promise the removal of the trial. He promises himself within it. There is a form of suffering that is genuinely altered, not ended but genuinely altered, by the presence of God within it. The suffering that is carried alone has a quality of desolation that the suffering carried in the genuine presence of God does not have, even when the circumstances are identical. This is not psychological sleight of hand. It is the testimony of every person who has walked through genuine suffering with genuine faith, not the performance of faith, but the honest, imperfect, sometimes barely there faith that keeps turning back toward God, even when the evidence seems to argue against him. If you are in the middle of suffering right now, real, serious, not easily resolved suffering, then I will not offer you a formula or a promise that things will turn out a specific way in a specific time frame. What I will offer you is what the preacher offers throughout this book: honest companionship in the difficulty, a clear-eyed refusal to minimize what is genuinely hard, and an anchor. The anchor of a God who has not forgotten you, who is not confused by your situation, who is not powerless in the face of your need, and who is working right now in ways you cannot yet see, toward something for you that his faithfulness has promised and his power can deliver. Hold on. Keep turning toward him. He is listening. And the things he is working in the season you are in will eventually make the waiting make sense in ways that will astonish you. Ecclesiastes and the healing of the inner life. There is a dimension of what Ecclesiastes offers that goes beyond the philosophical and the theological into the genuinely therapeutic, not in the sense of replacing professional mental health care. If you are struggling with serious anxiety or depression or grief, please reach out to a qualified professional. And please do not let spiritual language be used to discourage you from getting the help you need, but in the sense that this book does something specific and real to the interior life of the person who receives it with openness. It loosens the grip. Whatever you have been clutching, the need to control, the need to be seen a certain way, the need to achieve a particular outcome, the need for certainty before you can act, the need to understand everything God is doing before you will trust Him. Ecclesiastes works on those grips the way long immersion in warm water works on something that has been clenched for a long time. Slowly, patiently, persistently, it eases the tension. It does not force the hand open. It warms it until opening becomes possible. It names things accurately. One of the most disorienting aspects of anxiety is the formlessness of it. The sense of something being wrong without the ability to identify precisely what or why. Ecclesiastes is full of accurate naming. It gives language to the experience of striving after wind, of the weariness of insatiable seeking, of the grief that comes from wisdom without anchor, of the particular kind of emptiness that follows achievement without God at its center. And accurate naming is itself a form of healing, because the thing that has been named accurately has been seen, and the thing that has been seen can be responded to. It restores perspective. Not by minimizing what is genuinely difficult, but by placing it in the largest possible frame, the frame of eternity, of the purposes of God that stretch across generations, of the ultimate smallness of the temporary things in the light of the permanent ones. Perspective does not make the pain disappear, but it prevents the pain from becoming the whole sky. It gives you back the horizon. And the person who can still see the horizon, even in the middle of genuine suffering, is the person who can keep walking. It offers genuine hope. Not the saccharine, circumstance-dependent hope that says everything will work out the way you want, but the durable, theologically grounded hope that says the final chapter of your story is in the hands of a God whose love is not vapor, whose purposes are not vapor, whose faithfulness is not vapor. The hope of someone who knows that the judge of all the earth will do right, that every act of love will be accounted for, that the Spirit returns to God who gave it. That is hope with weight, hope with permanence, hope that can carry a life. The practice of fearing God in daily life. We keep returning to the conclusion, fear God. But what does that actually look like in the daily texture of a life? Not in the abstract, not in the theological definition, but in the ordinary Tuesday morning when you are making decisions about how to spend your time and what to prioritize and how to treat the people around you. It looks like waking up and giving the day to God before you give it to your phone, before the notifications, before the news, before the email, before the agenda. A moment, a genuine, even brief moment of acknowledgement. Not a performance, just a turning, a recognition. This day belongs to you. I need you in it. Help me see what matters today and do it faithfully. That is the fear of the Lord in practice at the beginning of a day. Simple, doable, completely transformative over time if done consistently. It looks like making decisions, the small ones and the large ones, with the awareness that there is a standard above the cultural standard. That the question is not just what is expedient, or what looks good from the outside, or what everyone else in your position would do, but what is right. What does faithfulness require here? What would honesty cost here? And is it worth paying? What does genuine love look like in this specific situation? These questions are the fear of the Lord applied to the daily decision-making of an ordinary human life. They do not make every choice easy, but they make every choice honest. It looks like treating people with the awareness that they too are creatures made in the image of God, who are also carrying more than is visible from the outside, who also have eternity set in their hearts, who also need genuine kindness more than they usually let on. The fear of the Lord in a conversation with a difficult person looks like the awareness that God sees this conversation and cares how it goes. It looks like receiving good things with genuine gratitude rather than anxious attachment. When something good happens, when the relationship goes well, when the project succeeds, when the health holds, when the day is beautiful, receiving it with open hands and a grateful heart, knowing it is a gift from the giver of every good thing, knowing it is held in trust rather than owned permanently, and finding in that correct understanding not loss, but freedom. It looks like returning to God when you fail, not with the elaborate self-punishment that perfectionists often substitute for genuine repentance, but with the honest, direct, humbled acknowledgement, I failed in this, I need mercy, and I need help, and I am turning back toward you. That turning, simple, honest, undramatic, is itself an act of the fear of the Lord. The ending that is also a beginning. Every genuine encounter with the Word of God is both an ending and a beginning. This study is ending. But what has been deposited in you through this encounter, the loosened grip, the named vapors, the recovered perspective, the anchors placed in the specific places where your anxiety was trying to maintain control, the honest faith given language and permission, the return to the fear of the Lord as the whole duty of man. None of that is ending, it is beginning. It is going with you into the Tuesday morning and the difficult conversation and the uncertain outcome and the ordinary day. The preacher would not want you to leave this study with a sense of having completed something. He would want you to leave it with a sense of having begun something, or recommitted to something, or returned to something that is so fundamental and so good and so inexhaustibly sufficient that it will meet you every morning for the rest of your life with exactly what you need for that morning. Fear God. Keep His commandments, receive the gifts of each day with gratitude. Do the work that is in front of you with all your might. Release the outcomes to the God who holds them. Build community, speak truth, act with integrity, mourn what needs mourning, dance when it is time to dance. Trust the seasons, trust the shepherd, trust the one who set eternity in your heart, because He intends in His own time and His own way to fulfill it. That is the whole duty of man, and it is more than enough for the ordinary days, more than enough for the extraordinary ones, more than enough for the hard seasons and the good ones and every season between, more than enough for a life, more than enough for the moment when your spirit returns to the God who gave it. Live there, return there when you drift, build everything on that foundation, and the chaos, slowly, surely, not all at once, but really, genuinely, permanently, will begin to quiet. Thank you for every minute of this time, for your presence and your patience and your willingness to sit with something this long and this serious. I'm genuinely grateful for you, every single person watching, wherever you are, whatever you are carrying, however you found this video. If it meant something to you, please share it. Someone in your life needs this. Trust that instinct. Subscribe if you have not. Turn on notifications. Leave a comment telling me where you are watching from and what landed for you today. I read them. They matter. And come back. There is more ahead. So much more. God bless you. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Ecclesiastes 12:13.